Good evening. Welcome. I'm Jean Louise Shara. I'm the City Council President, and I will be presiding this evening. This meeting. Oh, hold on. Oh my God.
And that's Sparky.
Okay, Les.
Just let me say hi.
You've done it. Well done. This meeting and all participating on Zoom will be audio and video recorded. We have two items on the agenda this evening. First is the appointment of Charlene Nardi as Finance Director, followed by the budget hearing for the FY22 General Fund budget. Laura, will you please take the roll?
Sure. Councillor Dwight.
I am here.
Councillor Foster. Not present still. Councillor Jarrett.
Here.
Councillor Labarge. Not present yet.
Recording stopped.
Oh dear, that was an accident. Okay.
Recording in progress.
Sorry, Councillor Maori.
Here.
Councillor Nash.
Here.
Councillor Quinlan.
Here.
Councillor Shara.
Here.
And Councillor Thorpe.
Here.
Madam President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, so first up is 21.232, appointment of Charlene Nardi as Finance Director. This appointment received a positive recommendation from City Services on May 10th. Mayor Narkowitz, would you like to introduce Ms. Nardi?
Certainly. Thank you and good evening, good afternoon, members of the City Council. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you today Charlene Nardi, my appointee to become our Finance Director for the City of Northampton, effective June 30th, upon the retirement of our current Finance Director, Susan Wright. As many of you may know, Charlene Nardi served as town administrator for Williamsburg since 2011. Prior to that, she served 4 years as the town administrator for Chesterfield. She was also town clerk in Williamsburg for 10 years and served as an elected Williamsburg school committee member. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in business from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. And she will bring a wealth of administrative, budgetary, and leadership skills to our city's financial management team. And I am honored to appoint her and honored to introduce her to you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Charlene. Is there anything you would like to add or say? And I'm sure we'll have some things we'd like to say to you.
No, thank you very much for that introduction, Mayor Narkowitz, and thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Dwight.
First, a process note, should we proceed with the nomination and then discuss the nomination? Does that seem reasonable?
That sounds very reasonable.
Well, all right, then I'm going to offer an unequivocal endorsement and request that we approve the appointment of Charlene Nardi as the Finance Director for the City of Northampton.
Second.
Motion's made by Councillor Dwight and seconded by, who was it?
Councillor Quinlan, I think.
Councillor Quinlan. Okay.
Playing under the wire there, yeah.
Councillor Dwight.
So, to follow up, Charlene, it's a pleasure to meet you in person. And pardon me for the familiarity. I should refer to you as Ms. Nardi for now, but I suppose. But I should note that every time I see Bill Sayre, I feel like I have to apologize because and I see him often. And it's for folks who don't know, well, as the mayor just said, that Charlene has served in the capacity as town administrator for the town of Williamsburg for these many years, and actually has, I know that the town has come to rely heavily on her expertise and her particular brand of calm. So, I mean, I'll apologize to Bill, but at the same time, I think we definitely won this. If it were a contest, we'd win. And I hope that your tenure, which I'm going to presume is going to pass, but your tenure will serve here to prove to you that you made the right decision. So welcome, and thank you for considering this position.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I'm very honored. I know I have big shoes to fill in Susan, but I am honored to be the mayor's appointee. So thank you.
I not seeing any hands for a second, I'll jump in and say that I actually had the privilege of serving on the finance director screening committee. So I was able to meet Ms. Nardi and interview her back in March. And there are many important qualifications and necessary experience needed for this position. And Charlene has all of that and more, but I was, as Councillor Dwight said, I was very impressed with her poise and her depth of knowledge, but there was another quality that Councillor Dwight mentioned that I really saw in her that I think will make her an excellent finance director for Northampton. He termed it as calm, but I might expand on it a little bit and say that from my point of view, which is the council point of view, I always try to remember what tackling that learning curve when I first started as a counselor felt like, and as a council president who has a majority of counselors who are in their first term, I think about this a lot. And additionally, thinking forward to the next term where we know there'll be some more new counselors, it's always at the top of my mind, and just sort of remembering what that's like to learn all of this for the first time. And I know how much I have valued Susan Wright's openness to the council and her willingness to help us navigate all of this. So I think it's important to have a finance director who is patient and has the ability and the willingness to go over and explain these complex, wonky procedures and provide us with the tools and the information that we need to make informed decisions on financial orders and matters for the city. And that is a quality that I saw very clearly in you, Charlene. Again, in addition to your obvious brilliance and your experience, I saw an ability to connect with people and someone who's comfortable in the role and who, this role really entails interacting with different people and groups with very varied levels of expertise in municipal finance. And I think that that's something that you will handle brilliantly and with that calm and that patience that that I think we've all appreciated. So I'm very excited and happy to welcome you to Northampton and to this role. So thank you so much.
Thank you for those very kind words. I will work very hard to do the mayor and all of you justice. So thank you.
Any other comments from Councillor Quinlan?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that we did have a really good visit with Ms. Nardi in city services when we talked about her application and nomination here, appointment, I guess I should say, really. And one of the things that we asked was, the role that Ms. Nardi has now is so kind of wide, and then here in Northampton it'll be much more focused. And so are there things that she was concerned about? And kind of to echo my colleagues who have spoken before me here, there was a real, I thought, humility to Ms. Nardi about that. She didn't feel that she has everything that she needs just yet, but she's ready to work really hard and kind of get herself coached up to handle this job. And I really appreciated that sort of reality, that it's so easy to kind of walk into a room and figure like, oh yeah, I'm the person, but I thought that was really, again, a kind of a humble sort of approach to it that made me really appreciate that. And I also mentioned that I felt like when Susan's with us, Susan Wright is with us, that almost always one of the counselors or another mentions like, oh, thanks for taking some time and explaining this to me on the phone this week. And she's always so patient. So Councilor Shar, I appreciate you saying the patience thing, because I think we'll probably provide some testing there too. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the council? Mayor Narkowitz or Ms. Nardi, anything further?
I just wanted to point out, only because his name was mentioned several times, that Bill Sayre is the chair of the Board of Selectmen in Williamsburg. Bill mentioned it, but I don't think he actually mentioned who Bill was. So just to provide the context. And unfortunately, this is the second department head that has come from Williamsburg to join Northampton. So I've had several tense conversations with him over the years. So.
Okay. All right. Seeing no other comments from the council, Laura, when you're ready, will you please take the roll call?
Councillor Dwight,
Yes.
Councillor Foster, still not present. Councillor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councillor Labarge, I don't see her yet. Councillor Maori,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
Councillor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councillor Shara,
Yes.
and Councillor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, congratulations, welcome aboard. Okay, so now next up we have our budget hearing, but that is scheduled to start at 5:30. So we will recess until 5:30.
Sorry.
All right, thanks everyone. We'll see you. Welcome. Good evening for those just joining us. We are now starting the public hearing on the FY 2022 budget. The City Council will hold a public hearing in accordance with the Charter of Northampton, Massachusetts, Article 7, Finance and Fiscal Procedures, Section 7-4, Action on the Operating Budget, a public hearing. The City Council will consider the proposed FY 2022 budget and hear all persons who wish to be heard thereon. The proposed FY 2022 budget of Northampton, Massachusetts is available for inspection on the City of Northampton website at www.northamptonma.gov. Is there a motion to open the hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Dwight, seconded by Councilor Jarrett. Laura, will you please take the roll to open the hearing?
Councilor Dwight,
You're muted.
I know we just made the motion, so.
Your end, yes. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Councilor Foster,
Yes.
Councilor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councilor Labarge,
You're muted, Councilor Labarge.
Yes.
Councilor Maori,
Yes.
Councilor Nash,
Yes.
Councilor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councilor Shara,
Yes.
and Councilor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, so tonight, May 25th, is the first day of budget hearings, and the hearing will remain open and be continued to the second day tomorrow, May 26th at 5:30 p.m. When you continue a hearing, it's like time freezes until you reconvene. This meeting and all participating on Zoom will be audio and video recorded. We want to thank everyone for coming tonight, those that are here from the city to present and those from the public. We have a large crowd, and we certainly respect that you've taken the time to join us at this meeting. So we begin the hearing with departmental budget presentations, and then after today's scheduled presentations, we will open up to public testimony. So first up on the schedule for presentations is the Health Department and Health Director Meredith O'Leary, who I saw and I am looking for again. There we go. Okay. Okay, Director O'Leary, you should be able to unmute. I think you're all set. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Welcome. Thank you for having me here tonight. So this is the first time that I've ever had to present my budget in front of council tonight. So if you have questions you want to ask me or things that I'm not explaining thoroughly enough, just let me know. But I'll give you a brief kind of summary of what we've done the past year, a real abbreviated summary, and how I'm looking to increase my budget for the next coming fiscal year. And then if you have any questions, just let me know. So in the past 3 years, we've had 5 declared public health emergencies in the state of Massachusetts, with COVID-19 being the latest and the one which really has shed some light on how important it is to have public health infrastructure in place to be able to prepare and respond to such emergencies. Public health itself has perennially been undervalued and under-resourced across our region, our state, and our nation. And the irony is that when public health programs are working and successful, they're invisible. And what's invisible almost always gets taken for granted. The mayor is supporting my request this year to add an assistant director and a second-time full-time equivalent public health nurse and the youth prevention coordinator to my budget is honestly the best way that he could have shown his appreciation for me and my department for all of the work and sacrifices that we've made over the last 15 months. This past year, the health department's primary focus obviously was the fight against COVID and supporting our community members, our businesses, and our municipal staff. We've responded to over 3,000 COVID complaints. We launched a county-wide public health nursing collaborative and investigated over 2,500 COVID cases. We provided COVID testing for Northampton residents, municipal staff, schools, and business and residents. We stood up a regional vaccination site for 6 months and provided over 30,000 vaccines. Additionally, the Northampton Health Department Prevention Team continued its substance use multi-sector collaborations that are part of our prevention opioid overdose, high-risk drug use, and family support outreach coordination that we do, and we provide support for the recovery community. This year alone, we've also been awarded over $2.5 million in grants, with a grand total of over $6 million since I started with the city over 10 years ago. We've received grants for emergency preparedness, operational readiness, substance use prevention response, and we've built a shared health information exchange database, which currently serves to collect data on substance use and response. But we were just awarded about a week ago a public health excellence grant, which will be expanding on that database to be able to provide Hampshire County local health departments access to timely data and in regards to infectious disease and management. So with all that being said, I again have asked the mayor to support us in adding to our health department team. And I've asked for an assistant health director's position, a second full-time public health nurse position, and to have the Northampton prevention coordinator to sit in our department too. The assistant health director, throughout the last 15 months, if I could have one wish for my department, it would have been to have an assistant health director. Northampton is a leader in the field of public health in our region, and our constituents, businesses, and visitors alike expect this standard of care and service that we've been able to provide. Having someone that was versed in all operations of the health department and being able to provide me both support on COVID and normal everyday health department operations would have helped immensely. Moving forward, I see the assistant health director be an extension of the health director and will be responsible for the planning, implementation, and enforcement of public health and environmental laws and regulation. He or she would design and implement preventative health and environmental programs. And what else would they do? I wrote a little list here. They would honestly be a direct support to the director and establish long and short-term range plans, objectives, and work on big picture public health interventions. This person would be able to step in when the health department is not available. The second full-time public health nurse position that I asked to be funded for, well, throughout COVID-19, obviously, public health nurses served on the front lines, educating people about disease, tracing their contacts, delivering quarantine and self-isolation guidance, along with providing vaccinations. This is not anything new to public health nursing job descriptions. It was just very much highlighted during the pandemic, and words like contact tracing and isolation became part of everybody's vernacular. With COVID-19 not being eradicated anytime soon, we will definitely still need extra support to continue to provide these services to our residents and businesses. But we also will need support to continue with just all of our other public health nursing responsibilities. The role of a public health nurse is to provide and promote public wellness and prevent disease and reduce health risks at population levels through evidence-based care and education. A principal goal of public health nursing is to address health disparities within marginalized communities by focusing on environmental, physical, and social determinants of health. These are the conditions that influence individual and group differences in health status. You know, the U.S. Department Health of Human Services, they have a recommendation that you have 0.09 FTE of a public health nurse for every 1,250 residents within a community. So this adds up to well over 2 full-time equivalent public health nurses for the city of Northampton with a population of almost 29,000. So we're long overdue, and having 2 public health nurses would just be at the bare bones. And then lastly, the Northampton Prevention Coordinator, which I asked to be budgeted for. Just a little brief history on this. The Northampton Prevention Coalition was launched in 2008 due to identify need for youth substance use prevention. Between 2010 and 2019, the Northampton Prevention Coalition received a maximum 10-year funding allowed under a Drug-Free Communities Grant program. Now we're in year 11. The coalition is currently operating on carryover funding from year 10. NPC is well positioned to continue its efforts and prevention efforts for the city of Northampton and its students. And if we have an experienced coordinator and an active steering committee, we are in real good position to carry on the work that has been done within the last 10 years. With the federal grant coming to an end, we're no longer allowed to apply for this funding source to support the NPC coordinator's position. The mission of the NPC is to collaboratively initiate, coordinate, and sustain prevention and intervention efforts that reduce teen substance in the city of Northampton. The two broad goals of the coalition are to reduce youth substance by addressing the conditions in a community that increase the risk for use and promoting the factors that minimize the risk of use. The second is to build community partnerships that support prevention work and create an environment where youth and families can make healthy choices. The impact of the NPC over the last 10 years, we have a student health survey data from the 10-year period of 2000 to 2019 that shows that the NPC has made great strides in driving down the 30-day use rates of alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana, and prescription drugs. When we look at the 10th to 12th graders from Northampton High School and Smith vocational students, reported use of the following substances in the last 30 days indicate that from 2009 to 2019, alcohol use was down by 29%, marijuana use is down by 21%, and cigarette use is down by 60%. So the impacts are, you can see in the data, have been huge. So those overall have been the large increases to my budget this year, again, that the mayor has supported and that I'm asking for council to support tonight.
Thank you so much, Director O'Leary. It's not lost on me that in this year when you've had to do more than ever, we've also asked you this evening to come and do this. So we really appreciate you walking through your budget for us and outlining these increases. We're very grateful.
Sure.
Councilor Labarge.
Thank you, Councilor Scheer. Meredith, I want to thank you, all your staff in the Department of Board of Health. This has not been an easy time for your department. I think it's a learning experience for all of our departments here in the city. And we've learned from this. I am going to support what you're asking for because you deserve it and all your staff. You have worked under such critical conditions. And also we have a rescue team who helped vaccinate our community along with the Board of Health, all your employees. And plus we had MIT come in and help us out with the websites and so forth. I have to tell you, I think it's well deserved here. Would I ever think of not supporting this? Of seeing what you all have done to help save lives in our city, we need to move on. We need to move on and make this department what you want it to be. And I have to agree with many of the things that you have brought forth. One question I have is that you do have a vacancy, Meredith, a DART coordinator. Is that are you gonna be looking at fulfilling that position?
I am. So that's, yes, that is a grant funded position, Councilor Labarge. And first of all, thank you for all your kind words. I really do appreciate that. So one of the grants that we have received just recently is expanding our our comprehensive overdose response teams into Berkshire and Hampden County. So we need a project coordinator to help implement this grant, the deliverables that we've written into the program.
Yeah. Another thing that I've been thinking about, Meredith, I mean, as you know, us counselors have thrown our support behind the recommendation of the Policing Review Commission of having a community care. And looking at all your expertise and knowledge of grants, the amount of grants that you go after and you do get, I think the Board of Health will be a great asset, hopefully, to come in and join with us with community care. And the things that you've talked about, just like with the amount of figures of alcohol, marijuana use, and smoking. We need to have people who are very, very knowledgeable to go ahead and open up our doors for a community care. So I know for a fact, some of the grants that you have gotten, it takes somebody very, very knowledgeable to write these grants and get that amount of money. So I want to thank you again for everything that your department has done and all the volunteers. I've even had a couple of nurses on my ward who volunteered in Ward 6 and went over to their house and thanked them for doing it. And I want to thank everybody for keeping our community safe. And Meredith, thank you for who you are and for what you have done for our Board of Health. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Labarge.
Thank you for that, Councilor Labarge. Other councilors? Councilor Nash, please, then Councilor Maori.
Thank you, Council President. Meredith, I just want to say thank you. I know you've been hearing this over and over for what you did for our city this year. I know that as somebody who trains to be in your position, you don't want years like this to happen, but when they do, you are prepared and you step up to the plate, and you did that admirably this year. And I know I speak for a lot of people that we really appreciate it. And one of the things I most appreciate is how many times, and we as counselors saw this, that you had to make a tough judgment call that, that didn't make some people happy, but kept people safe. And but you were always erring on the side of safety and keeping individual freedom in mind as well. And off the top of my head, I can probably come up with about 10 different times that you had to do that. And that is a real difficult position to be put in. And I really appreciate the way you stepped forward during the pandemic, which I noticed is due to we're lifting it on the 29th per your communication that we just got. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nash. I appreciate that.
Councilor,
and I do have some questions.
Oh, the floor is yours, Councilor Nash.
Yes. So let's see. So first of all, I appreciate that the Northampton Prevention Coalition, that the city is stepping up to turn that into a regular position under your department, that it was grant funded, that it could have expired, and that the mayor and you see this as a vital position, and that we need to fold it into our regular salaries. And I think that's a great idea. I completely support that. I also appreciate the work with the DART program that I believe originally started under the police department. Isn't that correct? Or
yes.
And has worked in conjunction with the health department to do some very serious preventative work over the last, 6-7 years, something like that. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's great that we're continuing that. I did have a question about mosquitoes, and that I noticed. I don't want to get into a discussion too deeply about what we're going to be talking about on Thursday, but I do see that there is a $25,500 line item for mosquito prevention. And could you just explain what we do around that?
Absolutely. So I'm trying to think what year it is. 2019, I believe, the Pioneer Valley Mosquito Control District was formed, and the city of Northampton decided to become a member of that district. So we have to pay dues into the Department of Agriculture to be part of this district, and they provide services for us. They provide mosquito surveillance, where they come out and set traps, and they do collections, mosquito identification, and then we send it into the state lab for testing. So we know what types of mosquitoes that we have here in the city of Northampton, in hopes that we can, sorry about this, in hopes that we can identify any type of vectors, disease carrying mosquitoes before we see disease in humans. They also provide community outreach and education and informational materials and brochures. The other money that we spend on in terms of mosquito control is we use a contractor every year to do larviciding in our 594 catch basins. They use briquettes, and they put them in the catch basins so we can eliminate the breeding habitats for mosquitoes. They also do a little ditch, kind of ditch maintenance work for us too, and anything else that we might need.
So as far as going into areas, into the meadows or in areas of the city where we can get a lot of mosquitoes, that's not part of this contract, or is that part of another contract?
Nope, they do treat part of the meadows also with the larvicide briquettes.
Okay.
That's part of the contract.
And that's how many times a year they do that?
Well, it depends on the life of the larvicide briquettes that we're going to use. So if it's a 30-day active ingredient life, then we do it monthly between April and up to October. But this year we're using 90 days. So they'll hit us 3 times during the season.
And how effective has this been? I mean, in terms of the disease rates that we've seen and the counts of mosquitoes.
So it's where we're treating right now. So what we're treating for right now, we don't usually see mosquitoes in April, May, and June that are carrying disease. It's a cycle that it has to go through. So right now we're just managing to keep the populations really low. We can look at efficiency rates by doing larval dips to see how many mosquitoes that we have in one larval dip compared to before we put the active ingredient, the larvicide, in to 10 days after. So that's how we kind of measure efficacy of what we're doing. So in fact, we are actually reducing how many mosquitoes will become adults. So it is effective. In terms of disease, West Nile virus is endemic here in Massachusetts, Northampton, nationwide. Again, where we're placing the larvicide briquettes is really focusing on those mosquitoes that carry West Nile virus because it is so widespread. We are more concerned about the health risks of triple E, which is Eastern equine encephalitis, because it has a very high morbidity rate. It's about 50%. Which is extremely high. It's not as common as West Nile virus, but again, the differential being that it has a high morbidity rate. And then those who do survive this disease end up having usually lifelong complications from the encephalitis. We don't, in Western Massachusetts, have a lot of breeding habitat that the mosquitoes that carry this disease like. It's cedar swampy, saltwater marshes, cedar swamp areas. We have small little pockets where we might have these mosquitoes, the certain species of mosquitoes that will breed in. And if that were to the case, we might have to treat, if we start seeing positive hits in our traps, that these mosquitoes are carrying the disease, or we start seeing human cases in our area that are locally acquired, didn't go to Eastern Mass and get the disease, we might have to find and treat those areas. But we don't do anything here in the western part of the state. Well, I'll say, in Hamden, Hampshire, and Franklin County to treat any type of adult flying mosquitoes at this point. We're trying to really curb how many mosquitoes get to be adults by treating them, where they're breeding.
One more question.
Sure.
When you refer to larvicide, can you describe what that is?
So larval is the stage of a mosquito larva before it becomes
larvicide.
Larvicide is okay. We use BTI briquettes to do larviciding, and it's directly put into the habitats of where the mosquitoes breed to kill the larvae. So it doesn't have any other effect on any type of non-direct animals or insects that we're trying to ward off. It is specific to mosquito larvae, this BTI that we use. It's not harmful to the environment.
So is it considered like an organic, or it's a much safer pesticide than spraying stuff in the air, correct?
Absolutely, it is correct.
So it's the preferred method, and okay.
It is the preferred method, but again, it's not the method that is used in large, swamp, saltwater marshes. Those types of areas are too large to put BTI briquettes in to reduce breeding habitats. But the habitat that we have in Western Massachusetts, it's very effective strategy.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's what I got, and thank you again, Meredith.
You're welcome.
I could have done without learning the term larval dip, but thank you nevertheless for that education. Councillor Maori, you had your hand up, yes?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I do have to piggyback on what others have said, which is, I'm so grateful during this last year to live in Northampton. It was just one less stress to know we had leadership here when often there wasn't leadership at the federal and state levels on this. So I'm eternally grateful, Meredith, for you and your department. So thank you. And I have two questions. One is, as someone who was a co-sponsor on the plastics ordinance, I felt a little guilty, with often the health department plays a role of having to both educate and kind of regulate certain ordinances. And so we'll say like the mayor's designee or a health agent. And I'm wondering who plays that role, or who do you foresee playing that role in the next year as for example, the plastics ordinance starts to take place?
So yeah, we weren't able to provide any support to the counselors and or to the community because we had a lot of businesses asking us about it, and it was just during the peak of COVID. So as we did before, the mayor's designee, what ban was it? It was the plastic bag ban that we had done. It was a natural fit for us to be the inspectors in places that we permitted and inspected. So the restaurants, the grocery stores, but there were a lot of businesses that it also affected that we didn't permit or inspect. But we did at times were asked to go out to these businesses if someone had put in a complaint that they were using plastic bans that didn't fit the criteria, and we would follow up on it. But it was nothing that I have the infrastructure or the staff or resources to do on a proactive measure to go out to all of the other businesses to make sure that they're following, the ordinance. But the places that we already go, we just incorporate, we have a checklist, and we just add it to it.
Yeah, it just seems like such a big role. I was thinking more moving forward where, I think when January rolls around next year, businesses, it's going to be a lot of work for you all. And I really want you to have the support you need to play that role. And I was very grateful to the mayor. I was very relieved to see this budget. I think it makes total sense. I'm glad to see the coalition not being, reliant on grants. I know that's very stressful to work under, because I know Miss Ananda Lennox, who played that role. And so I think so I'm happy to see that, and especially with these kind of ordinances, I really want you to be well staffed. So thank you. And my other question was, Council President, is it appropriate to ask about the mask mandate, or is that not? But
this is really just a hearing to the budget.
That's fine. I will follow up with Meredith about, Director, about that. We've talked so much this year. I feel very close to you. I'll follow up with my other question by email, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Councilor Miori.
Councilors, any other? Councilor Jarrett.
I just want to thank you as well, echo Councilor Labarge and the other councilors, and very much appreciate your quick responses to my inquiries. I appreciated the statistics around the effectiveness of the Northampton Prevention Coalition, and I wanted to ask how that compares to other communities without that work. In other words, how do we know that it's not just a shift that is not a result of that and other societal changes?
So, Councilor Jarrett, honestly, I don't have that information, but it's something I can certainly look to see if I can get it. If there's no baseline data, it's very hard to compare it. And so the communities that aren't part of the DFC grant might not have that baseline data, but right. I can most certainly look into that and see if we can come up with something.
Great. Yeah, and it sounds like a great program, so I'm glad we're continuing it. Related to that, I noticed, so this budget is 37% grant funded. And do you have any concern about, these grants ending and us not being able to continue the programs that we need?
So, well, there's always concern about that, but I have such a great leadership team, and there's so much money out there in the substance use world and, shared services. Money is just being thrown down into public health that I fear that we will be sustainable as long as we continue to look for more, for more grants, write more proposals. When I got our very first large grant, it was a 5-year grant. And when I wrote the grant, one of the things that you always have to consider into any proposal is sustainability. So that's always in the forefront of our mind when we're writing anything. And we went from that first grant, substance use prevention grant, having one coordinator, to now having a team of going to be 6 as soon as I fill the vacant positions, all supported by grant funding. So I think, with the capacity that I have and my staff, I'm not too worried about it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Dwight.
Well, Meredith, I'm sorry, Director O'Leary.
Okay.
I can't let this pass, of course, without also offering my gratitude and expressing my gratitude. Honestly, there's not a proper way that we could write as many resolutions and send you as many thank you cards. I really don't think it'd make up for the brilliant job that you did. Principally because you distinguish yourself as a thoughtful, deliberate director of health and for the community, but something that wasn't, I'm pretty sure it's not even in the job description that you did that was remarkable, that made a huge difference, which was clear communication with the community. That, you know, we often talk about the pathologies that are associated with the issues that you have to deal with, particularly around a pandemic, which we certainly didn't understand what that meant, any of us globally. But the fact is that no one, in the absence of that knowledge, there was opportunity for all sorts of havoc and all sorts of despair. And you've seen it played out in a lot of other communities across the country. Not so here. And that is due in large part to you. And I would imagine, and also being able to actually clearly communicate with a cooperative executive, I imagine, helped as well. But the fact is that I don't know if anyone can truly appreciate how Northampton distinguished itself in a crisis like this, which also gives us confidence going forward for, you know, an alien attack or whatever the hell else is scheduled for us. And I have every confidence that you'll be able to handle it. So, and now the question would be, as such, since we're all going through great pains to express how much we are grateful for your good work so far and your good works to come. If you had a wish list, if there were no barriers, if basically you were the #1 priority department, what are the items that you would ask for? I'm sure you listed ones that you thought the mayor could accomplish, and the mayor has probably been very cooperative in that. But if you just had the most fantastic wish list to make your position as complete as possible, what were some of the bigger ticket items? What would those be?
So obviously, like I said, my #1 wish is that we do have an assistant health director to be able to step in my absence to relieve me. Honestly, if I had that and the ongoing continued support for all of my asks through the 15 months as Mayor Narkowitz provided me, I don't think there is much more that I would ask for. He really heard me and all of my requests, and I don't think he said no to me once during the entire pandemic, and I had a lot of asks. So having the support of Mayor Narkowitz and his team moving forward, that would be my next biggest wish. I think having the assistant director, having another full-time public health nurse will provide us a stronger infrastructure moving forward. I think, you know, a city of our size could probably do with another inspector to help meet mandates if we're ever put in this position again. One of the hardest things that I can think of is, you know, the mayor and both the Susan Wright had said to me, well, Meredith, you know, this was early on in the pandemic when I was working long days, 7 days a week. You know, we need another you need an assistant health director. But at that time, there was no way I could bring someone on, not knowing the operations and not knowing how I operate, to be able to train them and get them up to speed. So it's just really important to have this infrastructure of the health department already developed. So when another crisis or an emergency like this does hit us, that we can proceed a little more normally with just daily operations. Like, we weren't able to provide or meet any of our normal mandates this year that we had to because we were so busy with COVID. I don't think that means much. We're not going to get our hands slapped by DPH or anything because everybody was in crisis mode. But I think moving forward, one of the biggest lessons learned is to invest in public health and, you know, being able to provide continuity of operations of the department while managing whatever emergency is going on.
Thank you.
Counselors, any other questions or comments for Director O'Leary before we let her go? Okay, I don't see any. I want to just also, again, add my thanks. Everyone said it very eloquently this evening, and I agree with what you just said, that this should be a lesson learned about investing in public health to the extent that we really need it. And also, in addition to keeping our community safe, it should always be pointed out, the work that Northampton did in the broader Western Mass region and for our neighboring towns and all of that sort of mutual aid work that we provided. So thank you so much for taking the lead on that and really providing for a much broader community than Northampton. So thank you, Director O'Leary.
Thank you very much, Councilor President. I can't thank all of you enough for all of your kind words and continued support through this entire time. It really has meant the world to me and has made my job a lot easier. So I thank all of you also.
We're deeply grateful. Have a good evening. We thank you for joining us.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, so next up is Superintendent John Provost for the Northampton Public Schools, and I am locating him. Okay. Hi, Superintendent. You should be able to unmute now.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Welcome.
And I know the counselors have received some of the introductory materials to the budget as well as a link to the details. So I will begin just with some introductory comments and then try to reserve the majority of the time for the counselors. So our city schools are in a much better position than they were last year when I came to speak to you. Last year, they were shuttered, and we weren't even certain we could find a way to safely acknowledge our graduates. And even though this meeting's being conducted remotely, school is in session in grades pre-K through 12, with the overwhelming majority of our students participating in fully in-person instruction. Our staff who wish to be vaccinated have done so, and an increasing proportion of our student population has had at least one dose of the vaccine. During the shutdown, we provided over 280,000 emergency meals for school-age children and partnered with local businesses to provide emergency meals for their family members. We're currently partnering with the health department to provide vaccines in conjunction with our meal program via small pop-up clinics throughout the city. Our goal throughout the reopening process was to prioritize services for those in greatest need. We actually started providing in-person instruction for a small number of students beginning in July. In September, we were able to expand that number to include more than 250 of our most vulnerable students. In November, the reopening process expanded to include our youngest students, who also were at risk because they truly struggled to benefit from remote learning. Every few weeks, with the exception of the post-holiday second surge, we added more students and more days to the in-person learning schedule until finally we had all students back 5 days a week. Our health protocols have been effective, and to date, I'm happy to report there's not been a single case of school-based COVID transmission in our city schools. We've had students and staff who've been sick, but contact tracing has always shown that the source of infection was not within the schools. That's all true, and it's all positive. It's also true that we had less instructional time this year due to the school year being reduced from 180 days to 170 days. And part of the 170 days consisted of remote instruction that was not always efficient or effective for all learners. I'll be sharing some data with the school committee this Thursday that shows our students made progress in basic academic skills from September through January, but did so at lower than typical rates, as would be expected with less days in the semester and with a portion of that time being remote. However, there were disparate effects and there were differential impacts. In general, the largest gaps were for our youngest students and for our Latinx students of all ages. As a result, we're proposing an equity-based academic recovery budget that focuses on accelerating learning for students who are disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. It includes both increased academic and social emotional supports that we feel are needed to get students back on track for success. The requested amount is $33,461,896, which is an increase of 4.04% over the current year. We plan to braid these funds with state and federal COVID relief funds to make a multi-year investment in helping students recover academically and socially from the difficult period of isolation they've experienced. I want to personally thank Mayor Narkowitz for supporting this budget and every other budget I've brought forward during his tenure as mayor and my tenure as superintendent. He's never asked us for a cut. He's never asked us for a level funded budget. During the past 7 years, we've gotten 2 elementary schools out of DESE monitoring status, increased graduations rates in the aggregate and for subgroups. We found a way to safely and responsibly reopen schools in the wake of a pandemic. These are successes that would not have been possible without the mayor's commitment to the schools, and I hope he'll reflect on this good work with satisfaction in future days. And with that, I'd like to reserve time for the counselors to ask any questions they may have about this remarkable year or the plans we have for mitigating any adverse long-term impacts it may have for any of our students, especially for our most vulnerable learners.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Provost. And you're right, it has been truly a remarkable year, and you have my heartfelt thanks. Councillor Dwight.
John, Dr. Provost, I'm sorry, this level of familiarity, I got to work on this. Thank you. Thank you. Again, we're talking to all the departments that have suffered probably the most from the vagaries of the pandemic, and you're no exception, to be sure. You talked about dedicating funding towards socialization, which I actually think is laudable, but I was wondering, the mental health of students who are all of them in formative stages, who have now since experienced a year of social isolation, among other things, and all the associated challenges that go with education. But there's also an undetermined level of trauma, if you will. I don't know if that's how it would be qualified, but that hasn't been realized ever, as to my knowledge, and particularly for this community. Now, if you're dedicating funding to this, what does that look like? I mean, what type of programming or outreach are you providing for students and I would assume by association their families?
So 2 items in the budget I'll draw your attention to are the creation of a position of a culture coach at the middle school. The culture coach is going to be in addition to the team that deals with students who are in crisis. So right now we have counseling services available for students in the middle school and in all the schools. But often, if counseling is ineffective because the student is in a state of acute crisis, the next step is the principal's office. And so the culture coach is going to provide a stopgap for that, a secondary piece, which will allow us to really focus on getting students regulated and back in the classroom so that learning can continue. It will also relieve the principals of the responsibilities of providing that kind of support for students so they can be spending more time in classrooms supporting teachers to implement the curriculum, which will be an important support for getting students back on track academically. Another add-on to that is we currently have a in-house suspension, for lack of a better term, room at the middle school, which we think we'll be able to close by adding the culture coach. But we're not eliminating that position. The teacher who's in it is actually a math specialist. And so we're going to use that person to support students with recovering math skills they may be lagging in due to the closure, which you might not think of as a direct emotional support, but it truly is, because being in that type of a setting is not helpful. for students to begin with. It usually doesn't result in changes of behavior. And being behind academically is one of the things that may cause students to feel poorly about themselves, feel disconnected from school, feel disengaged. So we think we're hitting on all different levels a stronger emotional support package for students at the middle school by the addition of that position. At the high school, we had already added an additional counselor. We didn't have the opportunity to really see the impact of that counselor's support for students because that was a new addition in this budget. And we opened the year with the high school being remote. In fact, just recently got back to the high school being back fully in person. So I think we'll see the full impact of that position next year. But just in case, we have also added $100,000 of contract services with CES to support both the high school and the middle school, which are the areas that we think we may have the most social emotional need, because those are the areas where students were out of school for the longest. And I'll just add this, the report from schools and my own observations of schools are that students are so far demonstrating tremendous resilience. For many of our students, the strongest intervention was just opening school. And so I think that in itself is going to have a very strong impact in supporting students' social emotional development.
Well, thank you. And I don't envy you, but I'm grateful for your commitment, the board's commitment, the school committee, and the executive's commitment to actually ushering us also on the other side of this pandemic and all the associated consequences that come with that. So thank you very much for your good work.
You're welcome.
Councillor Labarge.
Yeah,
And Councillor Nash.
thank you. I want to thank you, Dr. Provost, for everything that you have done as our superintendent. And I also want to thank all our educators. That was not an easy situation here. And especially with some of the children with disabilities who really had a hard time as far as doing the Zooming. And I know that because I've heard it from some of the parents, how difficult it was. But I want to thank you, the educators again, all the employees who worked tirelessly going through this terrible, terrible COVID-19. So thank you for everything, Dr. Provost, and all your staff.
You're welcome.
Councillor Nash. You're muted, Councillor Nash.
Thank you, Council President. And Superintendent Provost, did I hear correct that you said 280,000 emergency meals? Was that the number?
You heard correct.
So as you were going through the list of amazing things the school department had done last year, and then when you hit that, I actually teared up a bit. I mean, just that the dedication of the school department, the extra mile that everybody went, it was quite an achievement. So thank you for that. We had a communication a few weeks ago about restorative justice and how, because there's been a lot of discussion of creating restorative justice program for youth in our community, but that the approach of the school department has to actually been to incorporate it into the school code of conduct, and that the idea is that it will be, rather than have some formal, room or council that you go to, that it's embedded within the what a teacher or administrator can do with a group of students. Is that correct?
That's correct. We actually adopted a new code of conduct at the end of the last school year and spent this year training staff in its implementation. The code of conduct, what differentiates it from what came before is an explicit emphasis on restorative practices as an alternative, as a preferable alternative to more punitive approaches. And we have had about 1 half day per month this year focused on training teachers in methods they can use to really bring the code of conduct to life. I think one thing that I see as a next step for that work is educating the public about it. We just recently did a survey to parents, and one of the questions on there asked them to just respond to whether or not they felt that the school's discipline practices were implemented equitably. And it was a perfectly neutral response. We had 16% of the parents say they thought that the practices were very equitable, 16% who thought they were very inequitable, and everyone else had no opinion. So I think that we need to help the public and help our families in particular understand the new code of conduct and the restorative practice approach that's embedded within it. Because I'd like to see not a neutral response, but I'd like to see most of our parents thinking that our discipline practices are fair and equitable.
So with that in mind, could I'm putting you on the spot a little here, but and with keeping people anonymous and things like that, is there a particular situation you can highlight? Oh, this is where we implemented it, and here was the positive outcome, as opposed to how something might have happened in the past.
Sure. So I would say that one of the most unique disciplinary challenges that the schools have faced this year have had to do with masking. This is a behavior that's never been required in schools before, and is not necessarily something that students are predisposed to want to do. And I can say that in all but, and many students were actually somewhat resistant to it. But I can say that, in all but one case, the thing that got students to change their behavior was relationships they had with an administrator or relationships they had with a teacher who said, look, we know you hate this, but this is a safety issue, right? You're keeping yourself safe. You're keeping everyone safe. We don't want this to turn into punishment. We want you to understand how you support the community by wearing the mask. And so that was, sort of typical of a new type of discipline situation we had this year and how we would approach it from a restorative practice.
Thank you. And I also appreciate that you called it the suspension room, that we're moving on from that, and that we're diving deeper into this new methodology of working with people on their behaviors. I think it's great. And in terms of helping people grow up into well-rounded adults, I mean, it sounds like a great practice, a great new program. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Quinlan.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Prose. I appreciate it so much. And I sent you an email this week that I was really moved by your budget message in general and the effort that you intended towards the outreach to our community most in need. Just reading my email to you, where I wrote to you, let's face it, these are the children and families always most impacted by difficulties and difficult situations. So I appreciate the centering of those folks. And I was going to follow up with a question about the code of conduct in your message about reducing punitive forms of discipline, but Councilor Nassar beat me to the punch. So I just wanted to get the other part out, and thank you very much.
Councilor Maori.
Just briefly, I have to say, thanks to all teachers and school employees. What I think we're going to be unpacking this for years, the kind of stress that they've been under, and how they rose to the occasion time and time as things constantly change. And also, just briefly, I'm very touched by the focus on equity. I think it's very timely, and it makes me proud to be in Northampton. and have that being, addressed directly by the schools. So I was very heartened by your message as well. Thank you.
Well,
Any other questions? Councillor Nash?
Thank you, Council President. Superintendent Provost, so something, I'm just putting this on your radar, and I know that Councillor Jarrett is also interested in this. The Pesticide Reduction Task Force, one of the things that we were hoping to see addressed is the transition of the high school play field to management with organic methods. And we know that's possible because it's happened on the Parks and Recreation fields, and that it's my understanding that that transition hasn't quite happened yet with the high school playing field. And I think that somehow it's tied up between the school department having the say in it, and then also central services who manage the grounds. And do you have any thoughts on that? By the way, I've been backing off on it. We went into COVID, and I'm just like, I'm just dropping this. This is not the time to discuss this. But with us coming out, that I think it's something we want to put back on our plate over the next year to see if we can move on that piece. Your thoughts on that?
sure. So just for your information, that is something that our Budget and Property Subcommittee has been working on and has met on several occasions. We have made some progress on backing off of some things, specifically with the use of some herbicides for weed control. We are not off it on all of the the one pre-emergent we use, as well as some non-organic based fertilizers. There is a balance that you have to be careful of, and I'm not an expert in this area, but I do know that as you do the transition, it's important to maintain the health of the field, because there are other situations in nearby districts where things went south and they ended up having a lot of damage to the field. So there are certainly health concerns around the use of inorganic products, but there are also some potential health concerns about the degradation of fields. So trying to find that balance point has been the part of our discussion. And I think it's going to be an evolving situation as we try different methods, lower impact methods, and have a chance to evaluate the result. This year, we were able to have 4 seasons, but they weren't in the normal order. I mean, normally we only have 3 seasons. So we didn't have, I think, a good test of what our changes were this year, but I expect that process to continue.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, thank you again, Superintendent. What you and the school committee and staff and teachers have done in this last fiscal year has been truly staggering, and we're deeply grateful. And as others have said, thank you for all of the work that you did for children in our community and others in our community, even when they weren't in front of you in schools. All that extra work that you did to provide for our community, even when they weren't in person with you, is truly makes us all, I think, very proud and incredibly grateful. So thank you so much, and thank you for joining us this evening.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
Thanks. Bye. Sorry, I muted myself. Next up, we have Northampton Fire Rescue and Chief Davin, who I am going to unmute. Should be able to unmute.
Yes. Hi,
Good
everyone.
evening. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So welcome, please.
So I've been the fire chief for a little over a year now, and it's been nothing but 100 miles an hour, I think, from day one. So, I mean, as you know, our department's been deeply involved in the pandemic response from, before it even started, actually. So, we were the main distributors for the PPE for the other city departments. We were assisting with the homeless shelter when we had it at the high school, and now also down at the First Churches. We've been doing the decontamination spraying around city departments, fire department, police department, DPW. So we've been doing that a couple times a week, and obviously working at the clinic, administering vaccine, ordering PPE for the various city departments. So it's been quite the year. I saw the former chief, Dwayne Nichols, about a month ago, and I said, boy, timing is everything. So, but yeah, I really have to say that, I appreciate Meredith, and I know you all were expressing your gratitude, but, if it wasn't for her and her team and, the mayor and the support we got from the city, we would have never been able to do this. So it's a really great team effort, and I'm proud of the work that we did this year.
Thank you. You should be. Counselors, you have questions for the chief? Oh, Counselor Labarge, then Counselor Dwight, then Counselor Quinlan, then Counselor Nash.
Thank you, Counselor Shara. Chief John Devine, I want to thank you and all your employees of the fire department. And I'm glad to see that we're going to continue on with the 70 employees. I want to thank you for working with Meredith and her team. I can't tell you how appreciative it is of what your staff have done for our city of Northampton and helping saving lives. And I've also been told that from some of the firemen that I had talked to there, and my husband, when we went to get our shots, that a lot of them did it on their own time. They were not getting paid. They were doing it on their own time.
What?
What happened?
I don't know.
And being told how they continuously did it on their own really meant a lot. Hearing that, not getting paid for it on their own time, working 3 days off, another group coming in. Thank you and all your staff for doing what you did, working with Meredith and the other departments throughout our city and even in East Hampton coming in. Thank you dearly.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I'll pass that along to our folks too. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Dwight, you are up next.
Oh, sorry. Chief Devon, thank you. For a lot of us, it's true. You got your baptism by fire as soon as you, no pun intended, but when you became chief, it was Dwayne Nichols really does know how to ride a wave, I guess. So
he does.
Good on him and good on you, because the fact is that you are actually for all emergencies, dire emergencies that we have not faced or have yet to face or have faced, you are the principal coordinator for these our response. And once upon a time, the FD, now the fire rescue services are, I've had the pleasure of being able to brag on our fire rescue department to other communities, particularly going to MMA conferences where they haven't realized the same level of service and professionalism that we have experienced, that we take for granted, actually. And it's worth pointing out. This department has evolved over the course of, well, probably since you're even predating your tenure as a fire officer, but it's been significant. It's been huge. And it's a cultural shift that's worth noting. And the fact that the level of professionalism that we have is a testament to the fact that the commitment of the personnel and of the administration to ride out really hard storms and to stick with a moral center and come up with a program such as, well, let's say, becoming an ambulance service, which now is an invaluable feature of your department's services that they provide for this community. Again, unappreciated and misunderstood, not realized by many people. And I want to take this time because this is the last time I get to do this, so I'm gonna bear with me. This department is actually a source of significant pride for me, and I'm eternally grateful for all the emergency response services in this community and the services they've provided over the years, and to me personally in some cases. And I'm very grateful for your leadership, because actually you have, as I said, you've survived the baptism by fire, not only of COVID, but previously you've responded to many other emergencies with professionalism, calm, and never fully appreciated or acknowledged. So I think it's appropriate to do that now. So thank you.
I appreciate that, Councilman. Thank you very much. And yes, you're right. It has changed, it started with Chief Duggan and then Chief Nichols, and my goal when Dwayne left was just to continue, the leadership that he had provided the department and, just keep us marching forward. And, you talk about dedication, and back in, was it May and June of last year when the pandemic April and May last year when the pandemic started. I do the statistics for the department each month. So I do all the call volume, break down all the calls between EMS, fire, the different categories. And I track, sick time, comp time, vacation use, and I track it for all 4 of our shifts. And I send it out each month department wide, and everybody gets to see it. And I think one of the most interesting things that really affected me was the month of April and May of last year. I didn't have one person call out sick in 2 months. So that was, and I can't ever remember that happening since I've been here. So we did not have one person call out sick, and probably in the height of the pandemic, which to me was very impressive. And it showed that, the department was going to show up, they were going to do a good job, and, they're invested in it. So I'm proud of that fact.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Quinlan.
Thank you very much. And Chief, thank you very much for being here in your presentation tonight. I wanted to ask you a couple of things, non-COVID related, as grateful as we all are for the effort that you've put in this year. Just talking about the operation of the fire department a little bit. I understand that you're a member of the local hazmat team. And, I wonder about other things like that, like bomb squad and hazmat, things like that, that aren't necessarily focused solely on Northampton, where it's a regional thing. How many of those things do we participate in? How many of the firefighters from Northampton are involved? And how do you identify the firefighters that are ready to be involved in something like that?
Okay, good question. So on the state hazmat team, there's 4 of us in the department right now. Myself, my assistant chief, Andy Peelis, deputy chief, Andy Breen, and Captain Jesse Rosnick. So there's 4 of us on the state hazmat team. We actually have one firefighter, Keith Cotnoir, who's actually in the hazmat technician class now. And once he graduates, he will get an interview to get on the hazmat team. It's not a guarantee he'll get on the team. The team does the interviews, so that would be up to them whether or not they put him on the team. But the way we pick folks for the hazmat team, a lot of things go into it. Service record, sick time usage, all that stuff. What have they done for the department? And what we usually do is we post it for a month, and they have to submit a resume. And what we do is we interview them. I stay out of it. The assistant chief stays out of it. We have our training captain actually run the interview with one of the deputy chiefs from the Deputies Association, and then one of the union members, one of the local 108, either firefighter or a captain. So they actually interview their own people, and then they decide, they give them a ranking of, 1 through however many they interview. And then we just, whoever comes out on top, that's who we support to go to the school. The school's 4 weeks long, so 160 hours plus a little bit longer, I think. So it's a significant investment for the department, because they need some time off to attend class, which, we incur an overtime cost, stuff like that. So, we take our time and we pick the best candidates for the position. The technical rescue team is another specialized team. So they do all the rope rescue, trench rescue, high angle rescue, stuff like that. We have Daryl Springman's a member of that. He's actually the team coordinator out here in Western Massachusetts. He's one of our firefighters. And then my division chief of EMS, John Garrop, he's also a member of that team, but John's going to be retiring here this week. Unfortunately, he has a cancer diagnosis, so he's going to be retiring. And then, we have several firefighters, captains that actually teach at the Fire Academy in Springfield. So on their days off, they work separately for the Department of Fire Services, and they teach various classes down there. Most of them teach the recruit class. So, we've got probably, I'd say probably 8, 9, maybe 10 folks that actually teach down at the academy too. So, we've got a bunch of folks that keep pretty busy.
Oh, it sure sounds like it. The other question I had for you was, I had this actually was from a resident, and I just thought I would ask you about it. This is a resident that participated in the police department's ride-along program and also in the Citizens Police Academy, and they really felt like they got a great understanding of how the police department operates, and they learned a lot about that. I wondered if I didn't see anything on the fire department website, fire rescue website, pardon me. And I wonder if you have a program like that, or if there's anything like that, or, I mean, I understand there's got to be safety issues there, but I'm curious about if there's a chance for residents of Northampton to learn more about the fire department in a way like that.
We don't have a program similar to the police department. Years ago, it's probably maybe 10 years ago now, one of our members, Matt Lemberg, tried to start a fire explorer group to get some kids interested, but we really honestly didn't have a whole lot of interest. Once in a while, we'll get people that want to ride along, and we do have a waiver that we have them sign. We've had folks that, fire buffs that want to take pictures and stuff like that. So, we may let them ride along. One of our concerns is, 75% of our business is EMS, and, we take HIPAA very seriously. So, it's tough to have people, riding along and seeing patients and, seeing medical stuff. So, we try to be very careful of that stuff. We do have our open house during Fire Prevention Week every year in October. So that's an opportunity for folks to come in, see all the equipment. We invite the police department to bring some of their stuff over. The bomb squad's been here in the past with their robots and stuff like that. So, that's what we have done recently, and we just got it started. We were beginning it right before COVID hit, and we had to postpone it. But we've got a internship program going now with Smith Vocational High School. So if you're not familiar, Smith Voc has a criminal justice program that they've now expanded to include a fire science option and a dispatch option. So our first intern, Haley Pensavie from Smith Voc, actually just finished up last week with her internship with us, and she loved it. She's graduating. We've got her enrolled in the EMT class up at Greenfield Community College. And, she had a great time, and so much that she asked me if she could just come back this summer and continue to ride along, which, obviously she was great. And I'm hoping that, once we get her through the basic EMT class, our plan is to roll her right into the paramedic program at GCC. And then she'll come down here and, do her studying with our paramedics. And we're hoping we can get her right in the door when she's ready to go. So there's a lot of interest from some of the students up there, which is great, because I'll be honest, we had 3 vacancies this last time around, and I only had 10 applicants. To put it in perspective, when I came on in 1998, there was 1,500 people behind me. So, we had 10 applicants and 2 of them couldn't pass the background. So, we're down to 8. We're really struggling to find paramedics. I think there was, for civil service departments, I think there was only 200 paramedics that took the test statewide. Wow. So, you know, it's a struggle. So if we can develop some sort of a program, a good internship program with a place like Smith Vocational, and we can get some of these students right into a basic EMT class and then move them right through to paramedic, you know, I think that's going to be a benefit to us. And, you know, we'll get them when they're fresh out of school, before they pick up any bad habits. You know, they learn our system, and, you know, we can train them the way we want them. So.
Well, that's great. That's I appreciate all that information. You know, it sounds like that. Yeah, I remember last year we talked about recruiting with you, and even last year you had addressed it some. So you know, you're still having the same problems, but maybe Smith Voc is a
I know
resource.
I met with Counselor Thorpe last year too, and we had a very long conversation about this. And, you know, we talked about minority hiring, and it's very frustrating. You know, I think I'm hopeful that this internship with Smith Voc is gonna pan out for us, because otherwise I think, and you know, we're not the only department that's having these problems, and I think eventually it's going to force us to change the way we do business. You know, currently we run 3 paramedic level ambulances with 2 paramedics in each ambulance, which, you know, is very good. You usually don't see that anywhere else. And, you know, it may force us at some point where we can't have that many paramedics on an ambulance. And so, you know, we're actively recruiting, we're trying, but it's just, I don't know. Kids just don't seem like they want to come into public safety right now for a variety of reasons, but we're hopeful.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Councillor Nash, then Councillor Jarrett.
Thank you, Council President. Chief Devine, your report mentions a brush truck, and then I remember last year there was something about a plow truck. Are they one and the same?
No, Councilor, the brush truck we just purchased, that was last year. So that is now in service, brand new brush truck. The plow truck is our mechanic's vehicle. So we have a full-time mechanic who works Monday through Friday, 40 hours, does a fantastic job. And he actually does the plowing for us too in the winter. So he plows both stations and will assist anywhere else in the city if he's needed, you know, to plow. He's actually, you know, in big storms, you know, we make him, he can stay here with us. And if we have trouble getting down streets, if the DPW is tied up, you know, Jeff, his name's Jeff Bates, Jeff can come out and help us plow out driveways and stuff like that. So that's his work truck, I guess, for lack of a better, you know, carries all of his tools, all of his equipment, but it's also his plow truck.
And the brush truck does what?
So the brush truck is forest land firefighting. It's, you know, it's a F350. It's got a pump on the back with water hoses. It carries, you know, rakes, shovels, the backpacks for, you know, that have water. So, you know, it's got 4-wheel drive, so we can get it out into the woods if we need to, and, you know, use it for brush fires and grass fires.
Thank you. And what is Public Eye response software?
So Public Eye is a software that we use. It's a response software that we use. It ties into our dispatch center, and whenever we get a call, it transfers over to Public Eye, and we have iPads in each of our vehicles. So Public Eye is open on the iPads, and the call will pop up on the map on Public Eye, so you can see exactly where that 911 call is. It also allows us we put a lot of our building pre-plans in there. You know, a lot of buildings, we have pre-fire plans, we call them. So we've uploaded them into the software. So if our folks respond to a building and there's plans available, they can pull that up and look at it. You know, hydrant locations, it has every fire hydrant in the city. You can click on the fire hydrant, find out, you know, what size water main it is, you know, how much water it'll flow. It allows you to use a navigation system if you're not sure how to, you know, a lot of times, you know, we'll go to mutual aid and it'll tell you, it can map the software. So it'll give you the directions how to get there. It's pretty neat software. It's been very helpful for us. We're building it out constantly. And, for instance, when we had the recovered the body in the river the other night, we were able to take that call from the boater out in the river and actually plot that point on the map and guide our people right to where the person was. So it's very beneficial. Our folks seem to like it. It's made our job a lot easier. So it's like a response software for us.
Thank you. And one last thing I want to add, that you mentioned the no call outs in April and May, that I just want to say how remarkable that is. And in terms of, when we expect our emergency service personnel to have courage. And that was the time where, people didn't know, there were still unknowns about COVID and how people caught it. And, you guys are operating with all the PPE, and you guys, I think I saw over 500 ambulance calls to patients suspected with COVID. I mean, that's pretty cool. And thank you to you and the whole department for that courage during that time.
Thank you, Counselor. I'll pass that along. Thank you.
Counselor Jarrett.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Davin, and to all of your staff for their work this past year. I thought it was interesting to hear that you're having trouble finding qualified applicants. I know of several people who've worked with the private EMS services and hear of terrible working conditions and certainly lower salaries than we're offering. So I hope that we can get the word out about the good opportunities here to folks. I have a question. I get those incident statistics that you put out, and thank you for that. And I know this, so everyone is either listed in the budget book here as a firefighter or a captain primarily. And as you said, 75% of the incidents are rescue calls. Could you give us a sense of how that division of labor is set up? I mean, fires are very infrequent, but very necessary to have staff available. But is there a rescue duty versus a fire duty? And is everyone trained for both? How does that work?
Yes, great question. So everybody here at Fire Rescue is a firefighter and a paramedic. Most of them are firefighter paramedics now. We've got a few basic EMTs left, like myself. There's probably 3 or 4. And then I think we have 2 just first responders left over from years ago. But everybody's dual trained. And, you may be assigned to an ambulance for your 24-hour shift. But if there's a fire, you're going to the fire. So everybody's a firefighter, and, firefighter first. And, we'll use everybody to send to a fire. And then, the paramedics. And if you're on the ambulance and you get an ambulance call, well, then you're going to do EMS. But first of all, everybody's a firefighter, and, we run with a minimum of 13 people per shift. So, if there's an incident, everybody's going.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons I think, and you mentioned private EMS, we get a lot of folks that love that EMS side, right? They love being paramedics, but they're not big fans of the fire side, and we've hired people that, they make it through training, they come to work here, they go to their first fire, they come back and they say, you know what, that's not for me. I don't ever want to do that again. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm glad they're honest, before they get hurt or get somebody else hurt. But I think that's one of the bigger issues we see is, people love being a paramedic. They just don't enjoy the fire side. And unfortunately here, you have to do both. We're dual trained fire department, rescue department. So, you have to do both.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That helps explain it. Last year, I know we briefly discussed, and you brought up just now, the issue of diversity in the workforce, whether that's gender, race, ethnicity, other criteria as well. And then from what I'm hearing, you're just not getting qualified applicants. Is that the issue in terms of?
That's correct. And they're even in the EMT, the paramedic schools, they're just not getting the students like they used to get, and it's unfortunate. And, again, private EMS grabs some of those students because that's all they want to do is EMS. And, unfortunately, the paramedics are hard to come by. There's a few of them out there right now, but yeah, they're other people's problems, and, we don't want to take them on. So it's, this time around, we've actually hired a couple basic EMTs that are currently enrolled in paramedic school, and they're due to graduate soon. So we're kind of moving it back. Instead of being a paramedic, we're saying, hey, you're close to being a paramedic. And, one of the stipulations of them keeping their employment is that they have to graduate from paramedic school and then pass their paramedic exam and get their certification. Otherwise, they can't work here. So we're reaching back a little bit to some of these basic EMTs. They're younger kids, I call them. But I think it's worth the investment. If, again, we can get them, they're not coming from private EMS. They haven't picked up any bad habits anywhere else. We can get them to be paramedics and then bring them right in and train them in our system. I think we'll be better off. So we're trying.
Thank you.
Councilor Maori.
Yeah, thank you for your service to our city, Chief, and your first year. I just have one question of curiosity. With the climate crisis and increasing drought conditions, are you seeing significantly more fires in the summer?
You mean brush fires or house fires?
Brush fires.
Brush fires, not really. I think,
yeah.
And I think, it was Chief Duggan that put this plan into effect. When folks burn in Northampton, if they're going to burn brush during open burning season, we actually go out and inspect their brush pile before we issue them a permit. So I think honestly that really cut down on the amount of brush fires, accidental brush fires that we were getting when these open burns get out of control, or people were burning stuff that they shouldn't have been burning. So
what I'm visualizing right now, the ones that were
the big tree stumps and the tires and the mattresses and everything else. So
oh boy,
going out and inspecting the piles, I think, has been really beneficial for us. So, we catch those folks early and we won't issue them a permit, or if we go to, your brush fire gets out of control and we get there and you don't have a permit, or we can revoke your permit. If we get there and after your inspection, you threw all your kitchen cabinets out there in your pile, then we can revoke your permit and not allow you to burn anymore. So I think that inspection process that Chief Duggan, we've maintained that, and I plan to continue that. I think that's really cut down on the amount of brush fires. When it gets really warm in August and stuff, we'll get some along the train tracks just from, the trains themselves on the tracks. But as far as big fires, we knock on wood, we've been very lucky.
Right. And so in open space, and I really appreciated how last year you kind of proactively would patrol the swimming holes because there was some troubling grills and fires. But you haven't
seen about it this morning.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Yeah. So that was my concern with the drier weather and just kind of illegal fires.
Yep.
There was, But well, thank you for doing that. I hope that we get to see you again once in a while here in Leeds. We really appreciated that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, counselors, anything else for the chief? Chief, I feel like I remember one of the last public city events that I went to was Chief Nichols' retirement event. And I remember being at that event and a few different people being like, so what do you think's have you heard about this pandemic? What do you think's going to happen? And that was one of the last things I remember doing with a group of people. So you've really been in it. So
yeah, and the poor guy never got his retirement party either.
Yeah.
He still never held his retirement party. So
yeah,
someday.
Thank you so much. I feel like one of the themes tonight is departments that have gone above and beyond to keep our city safe. And yours is at the top, and especially not just keep our city safe, but to provide services and to assist those most in need. And so your department's work on the emergency shelters, the vaccination clinics, all of it has just been truly exemplary, and we just can't thank you enough, as you've heard tonight. So
Thank you very much. I
really
appreciate
appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else for the chief, we will say goodnight.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, and Counselor Jarrett.
This is with Central Services is next. Is this correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. So as a member of the Pedal People Cooperative, I can't participate in this item due to a conflict of interest, as Pedal People has a pre-existing contract with the Central Services Department. So I'll be turning off my video and audio. I may pop in if I have a specific question unrelated to that contract.
Thank you for telling us that. Okay, Director Pomerantz. There you are. Hello, welcome. You should be able to unmute. Is that working?
There we go.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us this evening. Good to see you.
Thanks, Council President, and good evening, everybody. It's good to see you, and thanks for the invitation to join you this evening. Obviously, just to echo on what everybody else who came before me this evening has talked about, it was certainly a challenging year, and that certainly held for Central Services. I'd like to just sort of step back for a second and extend my sincere thanks to the council and the mayor and Susan and all my co-department heads for an amazing effort at coordination, sometimes flying blind, as we've maneuvered through the last 14 months and sometimes daily team calls trying to figure out which direction we were moving in simultaneously. But just kudos to everybody, and especially to Meredith and her staff for just amazing efforts. A number of staff, Central Services staff, did contract COVID during last year, but the department basically continued to work right throughout. And there was one time period where we were rotating staff on an as-needed basis into the buildings for whether it was snow operations or security checks, handling leaky pipes, and dealing with our ongoing monitoring of emergency energy management systems. Excuse me, I was thinking about Chief Davin. Energy management systems. But for the most part, everybody worked right through. And in particular, I wanted to recognize the efforts of the school's custodians when we stood up the shelter at the high school in March for several months. I had a team of maintenance custodial staff who worked 7 days a week to do both cleaning, maintenance, and general custodial operations, which ensured the success of the shelter at the high school. And simultaneously, I just like to point out the efforts of the city custodial and maintenance staff in helping to stand up the vaccination clinic at the senior center. We basically emptied out the entire building, have kept the building clean, staffed, and with supplies, and worked with Meredith and her staff and Chief Davin to ensure the success of the vaccination clinic at the senior center. And I'll be bringing everything back into the senior center shortly, cleaning it and getting it ready for hopefully reopening to the seniors. So just wanted to point out efforts of those particular people. I'd be happy to entertain questions on specific line items in both the parking and the central services budget, dealing with utilities, services, building projects. But I just want to remind the council members that of the ingenious move back in 1997, I think it was, when the city created central services to combine maintenance and custodial operations for both city side and school side facilities, where we have now a long history of, while we have different unions, sharing resources, combined answering of problems and using resources wisely. We do a lot more in-house building than we've ever done. Everybody is licensed, whether it's electrical work, HVAC work, building projects in the various municipal buildings, as well as the photocopying, centralized photocopying program we run across the city, our energy management systems, our mail courier program. The list just goes on. And all of that, by doing it in a centralized focus, provides cost efficiencies and efficiency of operations for the city and wise use of budget resources. We did do a scaled back version of our capital improvement program last spring and summer. Obviously, things were fairly limited and quiet, but we have a robust capital program that we are already in the ground with for this year, covering both the parking garage, school buildings, and city buildings. And I can certainly give you some examples of what they are if you want to. So with that, I just want to thank you again for the opportunity to be here, and happy to entertain any questions. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. Councillor Dwight, then Councillor Labarge.
Hey, Director Pomerantz, sorry. I've been doing that all night. So good to see you. I haven't seen you in the flesh in a long time. Good to see you again. Central Services is essentially at the core of our response to the climate resiliency report. Essentially, your department is in charge of implementing all the policies and changes that we need to make, at least within the municipality, under city management managed properties. What's the status of that right now?
So a couple of points about that, Councillor Dwight. The city has been a strong member of the Green Communities Program for a number of years now, and through the successful grant efforts of Chris Mason, the Energy and Sustainability Officer, we have brought into the city hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants for, I mentioned, energy management system upgrades, lighting upgrades in the buildings, both interior and exterior, insulation, air sealing work, boiler upgrades, and we have an application into the Mass Department of Energy Resources now for the next round of funding, and we'll wait and see what happens with that. So that's an ongoing effort. We also, if you remember when the police station was built, that was a gold LEED building, as in the senior center, I think was a platinum building. So we have a policy in the city that all new construction should be LEED rated. We are constantly trying to reduce our energy consumption by managing the energy management systems. We did an LED streetlight conversion program back in 2017, and that has resulted in significant reductions in our electricity costs and greenhouse gas emissions by switching over to that program. A current effort that I'll highlight, the mayor issued a net zero by 2050 policy, I think 2 years ago. And to help plan for that, meeting that goal, as far as city operations are concerned, we are now finishing up a 7-building assessment of both building shell and building infrastructure. So HVAC, doors, windows, roofing, air sealing, insulation, boilers, water systems, to help us prioritize for ongoing capital planning projects, which are the most significant, most cost effective, and which will be the most robust as far as reducing greenhouse gas emissions as we move towards that net zero 2050 goal based on the mayor's policy. The 7 city buildings reports will be done this summer, so we'll be using those for capital planning for the fall schedule, and we will be starting on 3 of the schools, same exercise this summer as well, Bridge, Leeds, and Jackson, and do the high school Leeds and Ryan Road in 2023. Again, using those reports as roadmaps to help us really be aggressive as far as capital projects to meet the net zero program.
And I feel like it's appropriate to note, and this is a result of your hard work and continuing hard work on this in this area, is that Northampton at one point enjoyed the sole status of being the only 5-star energy rated city in the country once upon a time. Now everyone else is sort of catching up, but we, little tiny Northampton, distinguished ourselves through the good works of central services as being the one and only, the first 5-star energy rated community in the country.
Yes, and just because of your tenure on the Energy Commission, Councilor Dwight, you know, with the regeneration and adaptation plan now adopted by council, that is a significant roadmap to help the city move from planning to the implementation phase, to help us start in actually implementing either, you know, low cost or time phased programs to help us address climate resilience and climate adaptation, similar to what Councilor Maori was talking about with wildfires a minute ago.
Thank you, Director Pomerantz. I appreciate it. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Councilor Labarge.
Yes. Thank you, Director David Pomeroyce, for being here with us again. I see you have 2 vacancies, custodians. Could you explain those positions, please?
Certainly. So we are hiring for 2 positions, and very similar to what Chief Davin is dealing with as far as trying to find qualified candidates. We have been out for quite a while to hire for those 2 positions. And as a result of those vacancies, we've had to shuffle staff around to meet the demands that we have for custodial and maintenance services. One position is a second shift position at the police department. So we've adjusted hours over there. So we're providing both in operation and after hours when the station is somewhat quieter, custodial and maintenance services. And the other position, it's a split school city position. A number of years ago, there was a weekend position at JFK. It was a 20-hour part-time position. It was impossible to fill and actually keep people who wanted to work a Saturday and Sunday 10 hours a day. So we expanded it to a 40-hour position. So we have 16 hours at JFK and 24 split over 3 days with city operations. And we had a very good person in that position. They lasted for quite a while and they left. And then with COVID, we just have not been able to fill that position. So again, we're shuffling other staff in to meet those needs.
Thank you for explaining those vacancies. And I also want to talk about Ryan Road School, because reading on your department responsibilities, Ryan Road School bathrooms, could you talk about that a little bit, David, please?
Certainly. So I assume, Councilor Labarge, you're referring to the renovations of the student bathrooms. I think there's a guidance bathroom and a faculty bathroom rather, and then there's a common bathroom.
Right.
6 bathrooms.
Yeah.
So money was appropriated for a capital project. We bid that work. This is well before COVID. And then we put the project on hold because there was a question by the school nurse to set up a disabled student station and install what's called a hover unit, so the student would have more mobility to get into a bathroom.
Okay.
So it would have been a much larger construction project. We worked with the superintendent and there was no real resolution to whether we were going to proceed with that or not. And then of course, COVID hit. So there is money for that project. The plans and specifications are done to renovate the 6 bathrooms. And that will probably be on the burner for this summer to begin that work.
Okay. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because I was asked by 2 of the teachers during open house over a year ago to come in and look at the size of that bathroom, and having some of the children there who are disabled in wheelchairs, it was very difficult accessing the Hoyer lift with the children into that bathroom. So there was great concerns of a child getting hurt, and also that the 2 teachers also who have to assist that child. So I'm glad you talked to me about that, because I'm going to do a follow-up on it to make sure that everything is going smoothly and we're not having a problem here. Thank you, David, and thank you and your staff for doing what you're doing for our city. You're going to be hearing this a lot, and it was a really bad time, even for counselors and all the staff here in the city of Northampton, to be able to do what we had to do and help people, even our own residents, elderly residents who needed help and support, and getting people vaccinated. So thank you, David, very much, and let your employees know we appreciate everything that they have done and are still doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. I'll pass it along.
Councilor Nash.
Thank you, Council President. Director Pomerantz, nice to see you again. We usually bump into each other at Bueno Isano, and look forward to doing that again sometime in the near future. I just want to recognize the role of central services in opening up our schools. That we've had the school department and all of their dedicated staff, and also to recognize the achievement of central services to basically, it was a moving target as to whether or not schools were going to open up and in what way they were going to open, and that your staff was on the ball and prepared for whatever school committee, had landed on. And, that there was a lot of difficult decisions, a lot of moving targets, and having the schools ready at a moment's notice was quite an achievement. I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilor.
And also, since I was talking to the superintendent about it, what's coming, the play field at NHS, because I know that central service is also the other part of the equation for moving to a more a less chemical, more organic way of managing the field. And I know we've talked about this before, and like I said earlier, put it on hold because of what we've all been dealing with over the last year. But I'm wondering if that could come back on your radar as we move into post-pandemic times.
It is on our radar. Tony Kuzniers, who's the school maintenance supervisor who works out of my offices, he and I did a presentation to, and I don't remember the exact name of the pesticide-related committee or commission. And then Tony and the grounds foreman and looping in the superintendent, as he said, and meeting with the current vendor who treats the field, we're working on phased options. Again, the superintendent's point about you can't go too fast, it's got to be done the right way or you're going to lose the field. That is a key point that has to get rolled into the equation. And now that we are ramping back up, and fall is a time where there is treatment done. So it is on my notepad to see where we are and to sort of move that along.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Keep up all of the great work. Thank you, Director Pomerantz.
Councilors, any other questions or comments for Director Pomerantz? I'll add my thanks, and I appreciated you talking about the department coordination and how well the city departments work together. And, so, your individual teams, like each department as a team, but then that larger cohesive team of the departments working together this past year has made all the difference, and we're super grateful for it. And I feel like in many ways your department is probably the one that holds a lot of that cohesion and makes it all work. So I hope you feel appreciated. I know you're probably not the most effusively appreciated department sometimes, but please know that we do appreciate you and all the work that you all have done.
Thank you, Council President.
Okay, if there's nothing else for Director Pomerantz, we will wish you good night and thank you again.
Good to see everybody. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Um, I would like to move that we go for a break if that's possible.
Thank you.
Sure. Let's do, how about a 10-minute recess between these two sections of this hearing? And so 7:35 we'll be back here.
Done.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We are back. We are now in the public testimony section of the public hearing this evening. We want to thank you all for coming tonight. We certainly respect the fact that you're taking time to join us this evening. For those just joining, I want to remind everyone that this meeting and all participating on Zoom will be audio and video recorded. If you wish to provide testimony, please use the raise hand feature. Raise hand feature is at the bottom menu bar under reactions, or it's at the bottom of the participant panel, which opens if you click on participants at the bottom of the screen. If you're calling in by phone, you can raise your hand by hitting *9. If you're having trouble raising your hand, you may use the chat feature to send a message to me to ensure equal access. And because of open meeting law, technical problems such as not being able to raise your hand are the only thing the chat function will be used for, and it's only available during public comment. Well, during this time. So for the rest of this evening, we cannot accept testimony or commentary over chat. Private chat or chat only visible on Zoom during a public meeting is antithetical to an open public process, in violation of the council rules for public participation, and violates the spirit and potentially the law of open meeting law. If you want to submit written public testimony, please email it to citycouncil@northamptonma.gov, and it'll be sent to the councilors and be part of the public record for this hearing. I'll unmute each raised hand in order. To make a comment. Before you begin, please state your name and your city or town for the public record. We ask that you limit your comment to 3 minutes. You're in no way obligated to use the full 3 minutes, but if you do, after 3 minutes, I'll ask you to please finish your sentence. Our rules state that councilors and members of the public shall conduct themselves with civility and respect at all times. Your protected speech is a constitutional right, and one that we ask you to wield with consideration and respect for all, and with recognition that the public space that grants you that freedom is shared equally by everyone. Also, according to open meeting law, if someone's disrupting a meeting, they may be removed. As this is a public hearing for the FY22 budget, you may only provide testimony on the FY22 budget. I will ask that all but the council turn off your video until called upon, as comments are directed to the council and only the person recognized has the floor. The hearing can also be watched on Channel 15 or by streaming on Northampton Open Media's YouTube channel or other platforms, and the recording of this meeting will be available at Northampton Open Media's Government Video Archive channel on YouTube. And as always, I thank them for that public service. So I know that we have some folks who are together, and I have a list of them. So what you're going to see me do is I'm going to go to the raised hands, but then I'm going to go back to a couple names a few times because I have a list of people that are all in the same space. Hopefully this will all become clear. Okay, but first we are going to start with the first raised hand, which is Dana Goldblatt.
Hi, thank you. So I just want to say that hearing the presentations, I only got to hear the first and a little bit of the last presentation of the departments. And it's just really moving to be reminded of what government can do, that what our budget should be and can be in terms of public health and our public infrastructure. And sometimes I forget that because I'm not with you, and I don't know, it was moving, especially after COVID, when we've all been so atomized and so isolated and not seeing so much of each other. And in that context, I was just particularly angry at how the mayor dealt with the Police Review Commission's recommendations. And I'm angry because there's no, the initial pushback that we shouldn't defund the police department or reduce the police department, that the police are the only people who can deliver groceries to the homeless and sand and inspect people's car seats and all the other things they were sort of throwing out there that we would lose if we lost the police. That seems to have been dropped. And we've gone into the endless cycle of, no, we need to study more as the reason that we can't just fund a community care department. So it's been a year. It's been studied for a year since people came in and said there's all these other cities that do it. It's a really good idea. It's just a matter of moving services from one place to another and having them done by people without guns. It's not actually that enormously difficult. And the response initially of, we need to study it, seemed like a delay tactic, but okay, what does studying hurt? And now after a year of study, what's being proposed in the budget is a position for someone to consider how implementation might work of the things that were first proposed a year ago, after we had a whole commission study it for a year. I imagine that after that person produces their proposals, there will then be a new position to study whatever they produce, right? Like this goes on forever. This is endless now. And the actual substantive debate about the importance of a community care coalition, a community care department, is now getting just buried beneath the study the study of the study. Get a group of people to study all the studies on it, and then have them write a report. And now we're going to have a position of somebody who's hired to study the report that the people wrote who studied all the studies. That is literally what the proposal is right now. And I get that saying, let's study it more sounds like an out, but it's not actually for anyone outside the little zone where that is an effective mode of communication. Like there's very few people for whom study the study of the study sounds like anything other than BS, frankly. And now we sound like BS.
That is
So
time.
I'm angry and I don't know what to do with it. And I want you to turn down this budget until there's a real proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Dory Graham.
Hi, my name is Dory. I am a resident of Ward 3 of Northampton. I just wanted to agree, first of all, with what Dana said before me, that the delay tactic that was used when we first brought this issue to the forefront is not going to sustain itself any longer as a means to explain away any proven effort that community members who do not carry guns would be better equipped to deal with many different calls. I'll use an example of last year, I overheard a serious domestic argument. I was fearing for the life of the person who was being victimized very audibly. I called the police, even though that wasn't what I wanted to do. And my worst nightmare happened. 3 squad cars showed up, 6 officers arrived on scene, and at no point did they separate the aggressor from the person who was being attacked. And so by the time they had decided they couldn't do anything, they had to leave this person in this situation. And the reason given was, well, she didn't say anything. Any social worker, any therapist, any de-escalation expert would have separated those two parties, and 6 police officers with guns, with every equipment that we can give them, all abandoned somebody whose fate I don't know. I don't know what happened to that person. And I would also like to point out that I work in a Northampton public school. I speak only for myself, but we have to ask parents to bring in paper towels for use in our classroom. We should not have to do that. The cruisers look fine. We need paper towels. We need more staff persons at every single Northampton public school. And these are the things that should be at the top of the budget. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to go to the first NoHo community account. And I think it's going to be Hondo.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Thank you for having me. And I also like to talk about, the budget proposal, not just with first responders, also with public transportation in general. Because I'm also real concerned about the lack of intercity transportation in Northampton due to the pandemic. Now, as of this Saturday, the restrictions is going to end, as well as the state of emergency is going to end June 15, 2021. Right now, I've been seeing Peter Pan slacking on Hampshire County, only one trip per day. And this is not acceptable. And see, there's been other bus companies that service this area, such as Max Bus and Mega Bus. But, the problem is Peter Pan has a problem with it, and they keep chasing them away. But now that the pandemic's going on here, Peter Pan's been slacking, while two other bus companies would help service this area, also boost Hampshire County's economy. And also Amtrak. I know that that's above y'all, but really, one train per day going to DC and back, that's not enough. And with all the restrictions coming out of place, we need more transportation. And I am aware of the pilot program with PBTA going from Academy Music, Holy Mall, as well as Union Station in Springfield, Massachusetts. Because see, the thing is, I'm more into keeping public transportation statewide to help benefit all small businesses statewide. Because I see a lot of people struggling, especially in Northampton. And I understand, some business owners doesn't feel safe to operate fully, and that is their right. But another thing is too that I agree with the whole paper towel situation. We need more paper towels in all the schools and all the city buildings. I'm for last summer, I've been giving out paper towels as well as LPP products to those that can't afford it. And really, I would like the city step up, help out more. And also, far as the police go, I am concerned about. And really, I'm but today, outside of City Hall, there was a massive fight that broke out, and then I'm hearing people saying you're not welcome here, but the officer is right that they're gonna have a peaceful protest without fights. We're not gonna be fighting.
I know it might
I
be hard
agree.
to hear. That was the timer. So that's 3 minutes. Could you state your? It's okay. I know. I'm sure it's really hard to hear there. Can you state your name and your city or town for the record, please?
Yeah, my name is Hondo, and I'm only out here for school
Okay. Thank you.
in
Thanks so much.
Northampton.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay. Next, we're gonna go to Shelby and Donovan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. I would like to join those before me who are asking you not to pass this budget. We know that policing is not synonymous with public safety. The Northampton Policing Review Commission has done the work and compiled and presented the research that proves unequivocally that policing is in fact quite the opposite of public safety. But let me give you another example from my own life. In 2012, I was in an abusive relationship with someone who had a known history and criminal record of physical assault and violence. One night, the violence in my relationship reached a pinnacle that forced me to run out of my home barefoot in the middle of the night after being physically assaulted. I sought the help of the local police department, who assured me that they would help me and that I would be safe. A few days later, I received text messages from this person who said they'd be coming to my home to get their things. I immediately rang the police department and requested their assistance. This person was not on my lease, and I did not want them arriving at my home without the police present. The police told me that they would stay in the area, but refused to prevent his arrival or even speak to this person before then. They said this to me because they knew that it would be a better outcome for them if they waited for this person to harm me again. If they arrived as I was being assaulted, they could arrest and charge this person directly. But what about me? What about my immediate safety? It didn't matter. They would rather have me brutally mangled so that they could point to me and my injuries and say, see, he needed to be arrested and we did our job. But that's the problem. This system fails both the people it looks to protect and the people it employs to enforce the law. The budget of this town and the proposed budget of this town currently reflects the values of this town's administrators and not the community. Because here we have the community standing up to say for a year now, at least, that we want a fully funded community care department and to stop hemorrhaging tax dollars into funding a defunct, dysfunctional system of policing. Yet this proposed budget continues to increase funds to a department that just doesn't work and is clearly incredibly wasteful. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. I meant to say. Next, I'm going to go to, this is First NoHo Community again, and this is Erin, maybe? All right. Maybe they are reorganizing over there. So I'm going to go to Gabriel.
Do you mind turning your video on?
No.
Oh, it looks like that. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Gabriel. So back, this is Erin.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi there. I would just like to say that I would like to see more action on the part of the city. We would like existing and new community services funded to address mental health and substance use crises. We ask that more money is diverted from police who are answering mental health crisis calls and have that money used to fund community crisis services with mental health workers and medics that have gone through years of training to help in moments such as those that inspire those calls for help in mental health crises. Places like Oregon have adopted programs such as Kahoot to provide such services, and we have the opportunity to do something similar and better. So I just ask that you please use your influence to bring attention to this problem and make Northampton a leader in changing how communities are served and just how to serve community members. And thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Could you please state your name and your city or town for the record?
My name is Erin Zeiss, and I live in Northampton.
Thank you. Okay, now Gabriel, let's go back to you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Gabriel Peoples. I'm a resident of Ward 2. I use they, them pronouns, and I want to kind of second what folks have been saying about supporting funding in the city for supporting mental health crises and other services that are currently housed by police sooner than next year. I know it's a process, but the other thing I wanted to note was I got really concerned when I was hearing Fire and Rescue Chief Devine, I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his last name, talk about the use of sick time with the staff at the fire and rescue services in Northampton. I don't think it's something to tout or brag about that staff aren't taking sick time or that placement on a specialized team takes into consideration how much sick time someone has used. Sick time is really important for staff, and prioritizing folks who aren't using sick time is a really ableist and terrible system. I have a friend whose husband is a lieutenant in a neighboring city's fire department. I won't name names to protect privacy, but his vacation request was denied 3 times in the same month so that he could get married. I don't think that commending people not using sick time is appropriate. And I would encourage counselors to, I know that you don't have control over the policies necessarily of the fire and rescue, but in terms of, I super appreciate all of the work that all of our first responders have been doing over the past year and a half in the pandemic, but supporting and applauding people for not using sick time is terrible and ableist and disgusting. And I'd appreciate if that didn't continue to happen at city council meetings. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. Oops, sorry. Ignore that I just asked you to be on mute. Okay. Let's go to Calvin Brower at the first NoHo community computer.
Your video on?
All right, you should be good.
You're good to go.
Okay, my name's Calvin Brower. I'm here in Northampton, Mass, where I live. I'm here to talk about police corruption. And there's 5 police officers in Northampton that are corrupt. And I'm only here to talk about 2 of them that I know about personally. One is Officer Andrew Cole. I don't see if you know if you can see this picture. And these are bad conduct cards. Andrew Cole, Officer Andrew Cole, is one of the officers named in a high-profile civil lawsuit for the systematic intimidation and retaliation against a brown and indigenous homeless resident of Northampton. He has a history of violence and misconduct, including the unlawful search and arrest of a former judge. Another arrest in which Cole repeatedly punched and pepper sprayed a suspect in what he claims was self-defense. And a restraining order was placed against him wherein the judge who granted it ruled that Cole posed an immediate danger of abuse to his victim. Well, in my case, last summer, Officer Cole at the courthouse came by and stopped his car and asked me, he seen 2 bags of marijuana on my bench, and he asked me to come over and bring them over to him. So I did, and he sniffed the first bag. He didn't like that one. He sniffed the second one. He said it was real good stuff, and that he had to confiscate the bag. So I told him he couldn't confiscate it because it was legal, and it didn't make no difference that I didn't buy it from a dispensary because there was no law that says I couldn't. So he said he was going to take it anyway, and I told him you better call your sergeant and get him to say it was okay to take it, because if you try to take it without calling him, me and you was going to have a fight. So he called the sergeant, and the sergeant said, yeah, he had to take it. So I told both the sergeant and Officer Cole that in the future I would press lawsuits against them for illegal search and seizure of my marijuana and for trying to use me on that couple that I got the marijuana from to try to arrest them. So he was illegally trying to use me to get to them.
So it might be hard to hear, but that was the timer.
Okay.
Thank you. Are you able to just pass the mic to Aaron? Let's see how seamless this process will be. All right, I'm gonna unmute you and see, is Aaron available? Oh, here we go. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Aaron Clark. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a lifetime resident of Northampton. And I've been a homeowner with my partner and our 4 children in Ward 7B for the last 7 years. And yes, I'm also reading my comments from something I prepared ahead of time. So in the words of the great James Baldwin, we need to, quote, cease fleeing from the reality and begin to change it, unquote. The current proposed budget is an example of fleeing from reality, not an example of changing the everyday tangible reality for so many. I'm here tonight to echo others in calling to follow the Commission's recommendations and fully fund the Department of Community Care by at least $860,000, so that at least the full amount that was cut from the police budget last year is reallocated. Any change is meaningless without accountability to people impacted by policing and state violence. And I say this on the anniversary of George Floyd's death. If Black Lives Matter, then Mayor Narkowitz needs to truly commit to defunding the police with the goal of investing in meaningful, community-led safety strategies. And I'd like to thank the city councilors for your time as always. And I'll close with another quote, as I do this time, from Ta-Nehisi Coates. Coates says, quote, amongst a large swath to a majority of Black people in this country, the police are illegitimate. They're not seen as a force that necessarily causes violent crime to decline. Oftentimes you see Black people resorting to the police because they have no other option, but they're not seen with the level of trust that maybe Americans in other communities bestow upon the police. They know they could be a victim to lethal force because you used a $20 bill that may or may not have been counterfeit, because you were asleep at night in your home and someone got a warrant to kick down your door without knocking. Okay. He goes on to say, if you look at communities of human beings as natural creatures who tend to react a certain way when put under X number of pressures, I think it becomes a more sensible. What happens to a community of people who are policed arbitrarily and with violence, not just in the moment, but historically, whose great-grandfathers and grandmothers can tell stories of police officers either stopping lynchings or jumping into lynchings. They see law enforcement as illegitimate and other members of the community as more legitimate than cops. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to Jose Adastra.
Hello, my name's Jose. I live in Ward 1 with my family of 6. I've been coming for over a year now. I've had several accounts of Andrew Cole as well, trying to get people on the street to let just like come with me, tell me you got the drugs from them, then I can arrest them. That gentleman that spoke earlier, you should listen to him. People have been talking to you about Andrew Cole for years. And this is why we're here, right? Because they're just employed. I want to say that we have gotten the bare minimum from the mayor. At this point, we can't even talk about, oh, what should the money go to? We can't even be creative and compassionate about it. We just have to ask for the bare minimum. We should be going into the homes of the disadvantaged children in Northampton and the people who are like the people who the therapists are observing in the schools and supplying them with more stimulus money so they have time to educate themselves about how they should be raising their children and what resources they need. But instead, we're here having a conversation about what the bare minimum we can get from you people is, right? And I'm sorry, I say you people, like right now, I don't know. I know how some city councilors feel about this budget, but like, I think that I'm not surprised by 0.033 David Narkowitz, like with a hit again, right? This is super insulting. We have been working so hard for the past year. I've taken extra time away from my family every time I hear about an officer abusing someone in town, like, and for free, you know? And like, what does it look like when you're just allowing your community members to sacrifice their own well-being and to be a shield for what you feel protected by and what you want to fund by? I'm the shield, right? Me, who is historically oppressed, who you people arrested my father, grandfather, uncle, and drafted my grandfather, Okay, that was the destabilization of the colonization of Boriken. Okay, so people like me are still here, eyes clear, knowing that the police are abusing us. And how long are you gonna make me wait? I promise that we're gonna get equality. I promise we're gonna redirect the tax money that is being gained by the marijuana companies that you locked my family up for over 20 years. I promise we're gonna get equality, and you should be worried about how we get it. You should be worried about, because it's a guarantee. You can vote for it or we're gonna take it. Remember that.
Next is, let's go to Rye at First NoHo Community.
Hello. My name is Rye. I live in Ward 3 of Northampton. I would like to open by giving a huge thanks to Council President Gina Luis for helping make this possible, us all commenting together. I'm always terrified speaking to this camera, and I feel a little less terrified today, so thank you so much. My friends are cheering for me. I'm gonna tell a personal story. I don't usually do this. First, I'm very white. I'm largely benefit from policing in the U.S. I had two recurring nightmares when I was a kid. One was this sort of black shadow creature that bit me on the calf. I don't know why that was so scary. The other was from this time I was in a parking lot. I was with my mom. My mom went inside to buy frames for pictures. I was not interested in that. Stayed outside. I was just kind of sitting by the car, and this police officer came up to me and was like, "Why are you here? What are you doing?" And it was like the scariest thing that had ever happened to me at that point in my life. I was like 6, I was 8, I don't know. And I distinctly remember they told me that they were gonna take me away from my family, and that was scary. I had a recurring nightmare about it. And my whole life, my family was never wealthy, and we got pulled over for a lot of things, loud tailpipe. I don't even know sometimes. And it was always so scary because I knew what happened if they decided that my dad or my mom, who I was riding with, usually my dad, was gonna get taken into the station for 24 hours that night. I was just like, I can't drive a car. I'm like 10. I'm just on the side of the road, right? That's horrible. And I don't think these were bad cops. These were people doing their jobs. And I don't want that job to exist. I don't want somebody to have to do that job. That job, the damage that must do to a person's psyche to have to do that job, and then the damage it does to our community. We've seen all the different ways that harms us mentally, that harms us physically, and here we are tonight, 1 year after the death of George Floyd. Remembering how clearly and brutally and physically it can hurt the people in our community. So I beseech, beg, plead with the council, with the mayor. Please reduce the harm and the fear that we all experience from policing. We can't fire these officers. We can only defund the department and reduce policing. And then at the same time, please create this new department, this department that can actually care for us and keep us safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I assume this is the Donovan of the Shelby and Donovan.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Donovan Lee. I'm an East Hampton resident, but I work in Northampton, and I just want to say I fully support funding the Department of Community Care. I'm an experienced 911 responding EMT. I've been in many situations where the police have told someone their options are go to the hospital or go to jail. And I think our community deserves more than those two options when they're having an emergency. So that's what I have to say. I stand in support of all the people who have said that before me. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to Steve, First NoHo Community account.
camera on?
I don't care.
Okay.
Okay, hi, my name's Steve. I've been to many of the Black Lives Matters protests here in Northampton. Well, let's start first of all, when Jody Casper wanted to put surveillance cameras on every light pole on Main Street. That's a big waste of money. Let's start with the surveillance drone. I have no idea how much money you can get for selling a surveillance drone on the used surveillance drone market. But if we demilitarized, if we sold all of Jody Casper's military equipment, then you could drastically cut the police budget and make up for it with all the revenue you get by demilitarizing the police department. I have watched her almost incite a riot because she so overreacted to people coming to Northampton to exercise their constitutional First Amendment rights. Rather than fund the police, let's get rid of all their military grade hardware that they don't need, sell it, and then use that money for social services. The last thing this town needs is more money for the police. Thank you.
Thanks. Could you please state your name and city or town before you go?
My name's Steve. I live in Northampton. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. This is a phone number. So it's the number ending in 5171. Can you unmute?
Jane Doe. I am a resident, a victim of sexual assault, presently in a safe, secure location. I just want to reiterate, I tried to talk to you last week that the police department in Northampton saved my life. And because of continued threats on a 209A order of protection, I still need their protection every single day. I do oppose the funding of the Department of Community Care for a number of reasons. There's quite a lot in the Northampton Policing Review Commission that really needs to be looked closely at. There was a real failure around exploring rape and sexual assault and domestic violence. The funds that were taken last year for the Northampton Police were unwarranted, anecdotal evidence without a substantive pattern of wrongdoing by our police department just doesn't justify the cut. Chief Casper managed to keep us safe this year when crime and violence against police themselves increased all over the country. And it was our officers that really didn't have the choice to shelter in place because they were our first responders. They even sustained injuries while on duty and have been unjustly vilified. Residents have been without devices and broadband because of the digital divide and couldn't engage the police commission during the pandemic. Public comment to that body was less than 90 people in total in a city of 30,000. Only 6 were able to submit online responses, and one abolitionist spoke to the body 19 times. The commission failed to locate evidence of egregious violence, problematic policies or procedures in our police department, and then mischaracterized its responses to sexual assaults. It focused on improving conditions for batterers, which is extremely re-traumatizing. The language on domestic violence and rape is pro-abuser, biased, and does not reflect my lived experience. Creating supportive environments for sexual offenders, abusers, rapists, and batterers, and advocating a decriminalized approach shows little concern for the laws of the Commonwealth or victims. And the commission rhetoric about police escalating domestic violence is false. Police de-escalate them by stopping the batterer. The report also omits the local sex offender registry that's managed by the police. It omits sex trafficking, predators, online pedophiles, and the commission may not have wanted to look at these things, but it's the detectives and the other members of our police department who do and must. One of the commissioners said that when police are involved survivors are stripped of control over their safety. And this is false because I was shown how to protect.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
How to protect myself.
That's
Okay.
the time.
Thank you, Councilor Shia.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna go to, this is Gina at First NoHo Community Account.
The email is.
Can we pause for a second?
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you please state your name and city or town?
Sure. My name is G. I'm from Montague. I use she, her pronouns. I am, again, very angry. And it's hard to fully express how I feel at the moment. The mayor of Northampton has absolutely screwed us over. It seems that to him, the unpaid work of the BIPOC voices on the commission was a distraction to the white supremacist, quote, democracy, end quote, that we have here. So we are here because policing is harming the community. And we are here in front of City Hall because policing is a legacy to slavery, to police the Black body, the poor body, the homeless body, the female body, the disabled body, and more. If we have said tonight that you have, if you've said tonight that you feel safe with the NPD, you have not been listening to your community. Other times, safety from crime is safety from people different than you. If you fail to listen to your Black and brown community, you are selfish, you are ignorant, and you are racist, because caring only for one race or one class is an absolutely horrid way to live. Any type of safety you have felt from the police department can also be provided by the Department of Community Care. I wanted to share a personal story of my first experience with the NPD, and it was one of the scariest days of my life. I have a video on my phone where you can hear the transition from our peaceful chants to someone screaming tear gas. We all start running in the other direction. It was pepper spray, but even that fear should not exist. Does that sound like safety to you? That video shows the fear we feel when police officers are using weapons of murder and harm to control our right to protest. We are literally screaming for survival. Your officers who protect and serve are actually killing and abusing people. Yes, there is an issue with Northampton. For example, heavy brutalization of Black and brown houseless people. How the hell do you live your life supporting that? The reason I'm sharing this is to say that police do not protect the Northampton community, homeless populations, people struggling from mental illness, poverty, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. That day I just mentioned, for the first time as a young adult with absolutely no training, I spent nearly an hour comforting a member of the Northampton community suffering with pepper spray in his eyes. That is not community safety, I'm sorry. In the end, I absolutely support defunding the police by 50%, leading to the eventual abolition of NPD and nationwide policing. What are you going to do, council, to support your BIPOC neighbors? Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. Okay, let's see. Let's go to Pesha.
Hi, everybody. I'm Pesha Black. I live in Ward 3. I've lived in Northampton my whole life. I've learned a lot this year. I think a lot of us have learned a lot this year. And so I'm speaking to you tonight to urge you to meaningfully fund the Department of Community Care so that they can take on the community support and wellness responsibilities that we don't actually need the police department to do. As a point of reference, I work in grant-funded programs from Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We are funded in those programs at more than twice the rate of what the mayor has proposed for the Department of Community Care. And so I would ask you to please increase the funding for the Department of Community Care so that they can meaningfully start work in this current year, or this coming year rather, this new fiscal year. And I would urge you to reject the mayor's budget if necessary in order to increase that funding. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to Jenna at First NoHo Community Account.
It's just gonna be a minute.
Okay.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. Okay, you guys can hear me fine?
Yes, is this Jenna?
Yes, it is.
Could you
I'll
state
start the
your
video.
Okay, could you state your name and city or town?
Sure. So my name's Jenna. I use she, her pronouns, and I live in Turners Falls. I'm in Northampton frequently for work and recreation. I'm going to speak pretty briefly. I think a lot of people have spoken to why it's important to fund the Department of Community Care fully and to defund the Northampton police budget by 50%. So I'm going to keep it kind of brief. I would like to just speak in favor of fully funding the Department of Community Care with at least, I forget the exact number, but the $800,000 mark. It needs to happen by divesting from the NPD, and it needs to be funded this fiscal year. I don't want it to continue, like I don't need it to be pushed and pushed and pushed. I think that it's frankly disgusting that we're sitting here on the anniversary of George Floyd's murder and no action has been made to keep the community members of Northampton safe from policing. It's appalling, frankly. Northampton is made out to be this really progressive place. It's one of the reasons that I love it here. It's one of the things that drew me to it even before I moved to Massachusetts. So if that's important to you, show it and show it with your actions. Show us that you care about the community by funding the Department of Community Care fully this fiscal year, and acknowledging and defunding the Northampton police and acknowledging that police are not safe. So invest in a safe system that is going to work as prevention rather than be a punitive action against your community members, and show us that you show us that you care about the safety of your community. So once again, defund the police budget by 50% and invest in the Department of Community Care this fiscal year fully. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you pass the mic to Ryan? For the headphones or? Oh, sorry.
Hey, folks.
Can you state your name and city or town?
My name is Ryan Wadsworth. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Good evening, everybody. We're here at City Hall. And I'm showing you with the video, just so you get a sense of this community event. That this is a historical moment in which we have a duty to be bold and make change. This is an intergenerational struggle. And at other times when I've spoken to City Council, I've been optimistic. I've appealed, about, I think that a lot of our good humanity, is this guiding light, which is going to move us forward, And also there's this institutional inertia from also generations. And so it would be a lie to say that I'm overly optimistic, but I do think that it is valuable for us to at least attempt to connect as humans, at least attempt to have this be a collaborative process. If it is not, then the consequences will be, will continue to be political. And I would also say they will also be spiritual. And that's, speaking as a white person and who dearly loves people of color who have experienced directly police violence, who upon seeing a cop just like feel it in their gut. And so I would just invite us to connect as humans in order to, yes, avoid the political consequences of, for example, Mr. Nash, I saw you just turn your camera on. I live in your district. I speak with my neighbors. And these are coherent demands that people understand and people want applied. This over-policed context is something that is culturally specific. I have never lived in a place that has so many police as in Northampton. I've lived in Australia. I've lived in other, comparable, socioeconomic countries where, social services are what are provided by the government. It is not punitive mass incarceration which targets sectors of the population. That is the toxicity that I feel hurts our spirits.
I know it's hard to hear, but that was the timer.
Okay, I apologize. So just once again, welcome. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Can you pass the headphones to Sasha?
Recording stopped.
Oh, I don't know why that happened.
Recording in progress.
Okie dokie. Okay, Sasha, on the first NoHo community account, you are up.
Cool. Hi there. My name is Sasha Dunbar, and I'm here at City Hall. And I live in Northampton in Ward 5B. And I've lived here for about 6 months. And part of the reason I moved to Northampton is because I'm an aspiring social worker. And I have experience in mental health as a patient and as a person in institutions. And that means I've had experience in incarceration unwillingly. And so when I moved to Northampton, I found out that there was a peer respite. That was something that I was super excited by, because that means there are alternatives to the police in this community, and that made me feel really safe. But then I started going around Northampton and I saw that there were cops everywhere. And as a person who has been unwillingly forced into an institution and who is Black and biracial, it's in my body that I feel unsafe. And so that actually makes Northampton one of the least safe places I've ever lived. I grew up in communities that are over-policed, and most of them have been a lot more diverse than here. So to see a sea of white faces and Black Lives Matter signs, and so few people of color, but to see so many police cars, that's a sign to me that there are too many cops and too much money. And Austin seems like they're looking for something to do. And I smoke a lot of CBD to deal with chronic pain. And so that means I often potentially smell like marijuana. And I know that there are a lot of people who have gone to prison for a long time just for, having something like that on them or smelling like something. Oftentimes the cops don't really need much of an excuse for people who look like me to hurt them, to hurt our bodies, to hurt people that we love, to put us in places where we don't want to be. So I could go on for a long time, but I want to be in this community for a long time. I want to go to school here. I love being in a place that has a peer, one of the only places in the world that has a peer-run place where people can go when they're in mental health crisis. And I want Northampton to be a place where there's more of that, more alternatives to support for mental health crisis, instead of more police money where people are being harmed and institutionalized when they're in crisis. So I was really excited to find out that there was this proposal for community care instead of more police money. And it's beyond devastating to hear that there's a proposal to give more money to the cops. So it was hard to even come here, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Ezekiel.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your time here tonight. Ezekiel Baskin, Northampton. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the long-term plan within this budget and beyond it, and really embracing the recommendations of the Policing Review Commission, which fundamentally talk about reducing the scope and footprint of policing. And one thing that really concerns me in this budget report or budget proposal is the police chief talking about the departure of 9 officers, taking with them $414,000 in hiring and training costs. And there are 3 vacancies currently with over $200,000 in the budget, as well as a discussion of 3 more positions that are going to be vacant in early FY 2022 because officers have announced retirements. And I guess I'm really confused about the logic of spending a large sum of money on filling these positions, hiring and training for them, when even if we're not necessarily sort of reducing the size of policing in this budget, that's the recommendation of the commission. That's the direction we're ultimately trying to head. So I think that my question is sort of why spend a lot of money to hire and fill for these vacancies and these vacancies that are about to come that probably will be cut in next year's budget. I guess I'm left really curious about that, about why it's necessary to fill those positions now, why we couldn't have a hold on hiring while we start ramping up to the Department of Community Care so that down the line there are less layoffs. To me, that seems ideal, that officers can find positions in other communities, can see that the department is beginning a process of downsizing rather than continuing at the current size and then ultimately needing to lay off more people next year, which is harder for everyone involved. So I guess that's a big question I'm left with in this budget. I'm also really disappointed about 1.5 FTE staffing for the Department of Community Care. I think that's the staff level we needed this past year to support the Policing Review Commission's work. They ultimately had a half-time administrative assistant. That group could have really used a full-time staff project manager to support their work. And I think that we have the whole report to be able to build this department in a way that it can really be responsive to and accountable to the communities who are most impacted by policing, which is what the Policing Review Commission report talks about. That can't be done with 2 people. We need a diverse range of voices staffing this department and planning it. And so I would love to see this budget with a larger group of people, a project manager, an assistant project manager, more people planning this, because 1.5 people can't do everything that we're asking in this year. That's what we asked of the commission, and it took so much.
That's the time, Ezekiel.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, and James Lowenthal.
Hello, thank you. I appreciate all the heartfelt and articulate comments that have been made by so many people before me. I want to address the central services portion of the budget. I noticed that the number one line item is $195,000 for electricity. And I noticed that there are several mentions of lighting upgrades for various city buildings. And I am sure that a good chunk of that $195,000 is going to go to complete waste, and that a bunch of other funds that will be allocated by city council will also go to waste. It's taxpayer dollars going to waste. Why do I say it's going to waste? You can tell from space that it's going to waste by looking down at Northampton and seeing all the light going up into the sky. That is a complete waste. That's taxpayer dollars going to fund the purchase and installation and then operation of lights all around the city that are going up into the sky. And this is something that you can see yourself when you just walk down the street. Anytime you can see the light from a street light or a city building poking you in the eye, that's not light that's being useful. The light should go down only. So I'm concerned that the city is forging ahead with projects to install new lights, to replace old lights, without thought to this waste and to the collateral damage that it causes. Light pollution is bad for public health. This has been known for decades. It's been recently studied extensively by and reported on in a new report to the United Nations just last year that looks at decades of study of the ill effects on humans of light pollution, ranging from sleep deprivation, melatonin suppression, to cancer and elevated rates of diabetes and obesity. It's also terrible for wildlife. There is no species that benefits from light pollution. It's only harmful. We have an example right now going on. The Roundhouse parking lot, which is going to be rebuilt this summer. It's a central services project, is going to have lights that are much, much brighter than they are now, much, much brighter than they need to be. And I'm really concerned that the city is not getting or listening to the advice that it could use to protect public health, public safety, wildlife, as well as the aesthetic beauty of our historic downtown. And I encourage central services and city council to consider this, I hope, in the form of an advisory committee. We have a lot of expertise and people who care about this issue here in the town. You've certainly heard from many of us speak to it before, and here we are allocating money to it. I think now's the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Those are all the hands that I see. Let me just do a quick check over here. Those are all the hands that I see. So again, this is a hearing that is going to be continued to tomorrow. So what that means is, like I said, time sort of freezes. So we're going to continue it and then we pick it back up. But to do so, I need a motion to continue, please.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Dwight, seconded by Councilor Labarge. Laura, roll call, please, on continuing the hearing to tomorrow, which is May 26th at 5:30.
Councilor Dwight,
Yes.
Councilor Foster,
Yes.
Councilor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Maori,
Yes.
Councilor Nash,
Yes.
Councilor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councilor Shara,
Yes.
and Councilor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So the hearing's been continued, and I want to thank all the department heads that came to present us this evening, and to everyone from the public that came to testify at the hearing. And we can adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is made by Councilor Mary, seconded by Councilor Jarrett. Laura, roll call, please, on adjourning.
Councilor Foster.
Oh, hold up.
Shaking her head.
Thank you. Yes.
Councilor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Maori,
Yes.
Councilor Nash,
Yes.
Councilor Quinlan,
Yes.
Councilor Shara,
Yes.
Councilor Thorpe,
Yes.
and Councilor Dwight.
Yes.
Okay, we are adjourned, and we will continue this hearing again tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. Thank you.